Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. I will call to order tonight's meeting of the Milton Select Board for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026. I would like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. As usual, we will begin with public comments. We have allotted 21 minutes for public comment, 3 minutes per speaker. I don't know if we have anyone that has signed in. I can't say anything from here. Anyone in the room? No. No one online? So we will close public comments. All right, and with that, to item 4, I would like to ask the planning board if you would join us here at the table for a discussion. I'll also ask Chair Hall, just for formalities, if you could call your meeting to order.
Yes. And do you want to pass these?
Sure.
Thank you. Great, thank you very much. This here's. Liz. Yeah, you said this. Join. Terrific. Thank you for having us. I would like to now call the meeting of the Milton Planning Board to order. And we typically begin by introducing ourselves for those in the audience who might not know us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Maggie Oakfield, member.
Sean Fahey, member.
Cheryl Tagaya, secretary.
Al Munger, member.
And Meredith Hall serving as chair. And with us this evening, we have our planning director. Liz, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Ms. Manning, planning director.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Well, just to begin, Winston and I have met a few times, and we really thought, just at the beginning of, following the election with new members, one of the things that we really felt strongly is improving and having good open communication between the planning board and the select board. So with that, we thought, rather than just my meeting with Winston, that we would have the entire board come and have opportunities to speak on some of the things that we're working on with shared goals in mind. I know some of the materials have been distributed to you. I thought first I would give you a highlighted overview of sort of what the planning board has been working on. I'm not going to go into every detail of the matrix that you've been sent, but this was a wonderful way to organize projects that are being worked on not only by the planning board, but by the planning, the development, the planning staff as well. Because there's a lot of things that they oversee that don't necessarily involve the planning board. So just highlighting, and Liz and Avante did a great job of putting this together. The matrix, if you look into, if you've gone through it, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But it was divided up into what we work on, whether it be a category of housing, open space and recreation, climate and environment, zoning and planning, traffic and transportation, affordable housing compliance, budget and finance, with regards to our budgeting, and managing projects and grants, town projects and committees that we serve on, such as in the various, a lot of the committees that you all sit on as well. There's also a lot of other regional things that are trainings, things that the staff attends and are involved with in ongoing to keep updated with state regulations and what's happening on the state level especially. The items that are in here are things that we are, have been working on. Just for, and many of you may know this, some of you may not, and for those watching, currently there are 11 large projects under construction right now that have been approved projects. And some are close to being finished and completed, others are still in progress, but all have been approved. They would include the Gardner School, which will be a new preschool, if anyone has seen on Blue Hill Avenue, 2 Elliott Street, which is the new market that will open up where the Bank of America building is. That's very close to completion. 152 Robbins Street, the farm stand there. 936 Brush Hill Road, the Truslow 40B project. 711 Randolph Avenue, the Truslow should be completed this summer. 711 Randolph Avenue, fall of 2026. 440 Granite Ave, fall of 2026. 40 Access Road, 40B project, summer 2027. 582 Blue Hill Ave, summer 2027. The East Milton Residences, fall 2027. 107 Highland Street, which is gonna be a memory care facility, soon to begin construction, spring 2028. And the Winter Valley expansion, also 2028. Some of the items that we've also looked at and putting into not only things that we're currently working on, but future zoning bylaw and regulation amendments that we're looking at. Things that we've discussed wanting to take a look at: condominium conversion, the West Milton Brook Road overlay, pre-existing non-conforming uses for our businesses that are in residential districts, a cut and fill bylaw, looking at floor area ratios for single-family home and in general, new construction, business zoning district boundaries, parking requirements, dimensional requirements for accessory structures, small cellular, battery storage and solar, site plan for town projects, short-term rentals, low-impact design, subdivision rules and regulations, and scenic road regulations, updating some of those. So that is sort of an overview. As you know, we've been, busy with doing a lot of really exciting work in Milton, and we're gonna be seeing a lot of that. And the staff is overseeing the completion of some of these housing projects that we've been working on and have been improving in recent past. So that is a high level just overview. And so we were not here all night. Winston and I thought, let's sort of narrow it down to, what are some really the most important things that we're working on that we really we rely on the support of the select board in doing these and funding these. So we appreciate our having time together. So the items that we sort of were sort of first on the forefront, the housing production plan is the first thing I'll speak on. Next, and actually I think I'm gonna leave the economic development plan for last, because I think we're gonna wanna dig into that and spend a little bit more time. The recodification of our zoning bylaws. It is on our agenda for Thursday, but maybe a brief discussion on La Brea. Since our board has not had a chance to speak on that, we will have that on our agenda. And then just communication and ways ideas for better communication between our boards. To start with the housing production plan, there was a kickoff meeting, and feel free if those of you want to add something to this who were able to attend. Cheryl is our representative. Sean was out of the country, so he will be catching up on that initial meeting. And from
It's gonna be myself and Megan Nolan, who's not with us tonight, so we were there for kickoff.
You were there,
as well,
so
we can
feel
speak
free to
about
add
that.
anything if I'm just gonna do an overview also for people who are watching, because we do have a great committee comprised of two select board members, 2 planning board members, and 2 affordable housing trust members. And we are very fortunate to have our consultant, Karen Sonnenborg, who there was a really robust housing production plan Cheryl was on that committee and many other really wonderful members who really dug in and spent a lot of time on that housing production plan. So she's very familiar with our town, very familiar with a lot of, the issues that Milton and challenges that Milton has had, and helping to guide us through this process. That kickoff meeting began, and I'll just highlight just sort of task 1 through 7, what those are. And that is, again, the task 1 was the kickoff and coordination. Next is the data collection and analysis. And task 3 is the housing needs assessment. And all of those will be completed fairly soon, but I think there's a first draft that's been issued for the committee, because that timeframe was to be on schedule, was to be the end of June for the kickoff, the data collection, the needs assessment, and development of constraints and opportunities. So those are the first 4 tasks that will be completed. Task number 5, which is a really important part of the housing production process, is community outreach. And so reaching out to the community for community engagement will be task 5. Folks in the community should look at that happening through the month of July. And then task 6, goals, strategy, and action plan. And that will be coming out in community engagement. Community engagement September, when people are back in the fall. We know folks are away in the summer, and we want to make sure that we're, being able to reach out to as many people as possible. So task 5, community engagement, and then goals, strategies, action plan, that will be sort of ongoing into October with the October, and then finalize and submit the plan by November. And it's extremely important that we do get this done, and it's been a goal and a focus of the planning board. I know it is for the select board. We're currently, our current housing production plan has expired. So being out of compliance, it's not only safe harbor, but it's also just, associated with other grant funding and things that we would be working on. So it's critical that we do get this done, and I think this is a great timeframe, working with a great committee and a great consultant. So Liz, I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add.
I have a quick question. I may have missed this because I was absorbing a bunch of information, but what's the duration of the plan of the project?
Our last
5
plan,
years.
5 years, that's, yeah.
No, I mean, like, how long is it gonna take the consultants to do this plan?
So that's part of our kickoff meeting was laying out that calendar.
Yeah.
The goal is, and please tell me where I'm wrong here.
November,
November.
finalize and submit the plan.
So there are
Okay.
steps along the way
So
that will
it's gonna be a
completed.
3-month engagement in order to get back into.
Right.
Okay.
So it's really doing the task 1, kickoff and coordination, data collection, needs assessment, development constraints and opportunities by the end of June. Then, and then sort of kicking off and moving into community engagement, goal, strategy, action plan in September, October, and finalizing by November. So I think we should be in a good place to submit before the end of the year, yeah.
Do we have that, was that calendar shared with us at the board?
Yes, yep, I did, I shared out that, I shared out the schedule. I think what we're gonna try to do on the meeting on the 15th is try to nail down some of those dates. I know we talked about wanting to, similar to this effort tonight, wanting to collaborate potentially on another joint meeting, if that can help kind of the schedule and kind of move things along. So, yeah, I'd like to try to nail down some of those dates and sort of look at, what the potential conflicts might be with fall town meeting, requirements and things like that, so.
So there's the summary that you circulated to us, targets mid-October for that joint meeting?
I believe so, yes, yep. That's the target, so I think we'll just have to kind of, put everything on paper and see where the conflicts are and try to, chart a path to get us to November. Karen has already supplied the needs assessment, so tasks 1, 2, and 3 are complete. So we're on schedule, and I think if we can combine a few efforts to move it forward faster in the fall, then we should be able to stay on schedule.
One of the things that we spoke about with Karen was getting a real sense of where we are with our percentage of the subsidized housing inventory. There's been some talk about we're close, and how close are we really? But is that something that she has in the draft that's been circulated?
I got it yesterday,
So we
and
don't know
I've
yet.
read like some of it, so and I haven't circulated it beyond that. I think the number's like in the 7s. I mean, Nick might have that number more handy than me in terms of the SHI.
I think that's right, it's a bit of a moving target as projects have come on and come off, just based on their various where they are in their construction schedules, that sounds about right. But if they're all built and they open, everything that's been approved would kick in over 10%.
When is the effective date of like a unit that counts towards safe harbor? Is it when there's an occupancy permit, like?
There's 3 different thresholds, so it's upon comprehensive permit being approved, then there's a year to get a building permit, then you can go back on, so you can go on then, and you come off if you don't get your building permit within a year.
Okay.
You can go on the list if you have a building permit that lasts 18 months. Then you can come off again, and then you go on permanently with certificates of occupancy.
Okay. So like the CO is like really the point of
Final
which-
permit.
Okay.
So with the schedule that you outlined, Meredith, we're into 2028 for some of the units that are being counted, right? So like Winter Valley, it's 30-some units. I think you said spring of 28. So my understanding is that we still, without the housing production plan, we're still subject to being, receiving 40B applications because we haven't actually finally booked all of those. That's just for those who are watching. I think it's important to understand the value of the housing production plan for temporary safe harbor, given things go on and off. You still have windows for 40B developers to submit, even though you think you're almost there. It's an important effort. And so in September, folks hopefully can participate in the public forum, because part of the plan is identifying locations where affordable housing can be located. Places that the town believes are good locations, including private property and public property. And it's those identifications of the sites, from my experience in the past, is really where the public wants to have some understanding and input into that before the plan's finalized.
And the good news is that we have made a tremendous amount of progress in recent, historically, in recent past, there's been quite a few. Not all by our own choice, it was fairly forced on us, but it was, but yeah, there's been a lot of progress made, which is good. Okay, so then we can move on, recodification, just again, a high level view. Town meeting member, I guess it's been a year and a half, 2 years that we passed the funding for general code to come in and upload, make all of our zoning bylaws accessible online. Now, just because it's online doesn't mean it's necessarily organized or that certain areas are in conflict. So the good news is KP Law, now that we have KP Law, can do this in-house, because we had previously, the planning board had been concerned on, well, how do we go to the next step? We would need an attorney to come in, we would need to, solicit the services to come in, which is extremely expensive when towns do that. So the ability to work with KP Law and have Carolyn Murray do this in phases, we won't be able to do everything at once. We understand it's likely, it's not that realistic for communities to say, you know what, we're gonna throw out the entire bylaw, come back with something new, and expect town meeting to understand that, and follow that process. So what we're gonna do is do a first phase, an audit, as part of our first phase, and And it will be a 4-phase project. And once we finish the audit, we'll really know what we're up against as far as, do sections need to be moved, what needs to be consolidated, there's been issues with, really, particularly for the building department in town, to be able to understand our zoning. It takes a while. Joe Prondak, it took a while. It's been a point of frustration for applicants, developers to come into town to say, wait, we thought it was this way, but now we're reading something else. So this way, it'll be clear, clean, as concise as possible, and Carolyn Murray will be leading that. So again, we appreciate support and funding for this. And I'll just highlight the phases right now that KP is, that Carolyn has laid out. Phase 1 is the optional zoning audit, which we all felt was really important. Phase 2 is a zoning diagnostic, and that would be our next step. They will prepare a comprehensive diagnostic report identifying the housekeeping, organizational, and legal issues that should be addressed as part of the revision process. And then the next step, 3 zoning drafts. We're looking at some of our, depending on, how the planning board feels, is looking at some of the drafts of our current zoning and maybe cleaning up some of those drafts that we know have been problematic in the past. And then the phase 4 is the adoption process, which will certainly will include a lot of public outreach, sort of explaining what the changes are so that residents aren't, panicked and they're worried that certain zoning's gonna change without their understanding. This is really not to look at changing new zoning. It's a cleanup of zoning that will be in a digital form that will be easily accessible for anyone, even a homeowner saying, oh, what are my setbacks? What are my, certain things in my zone, just in my district that I live in. So it'll be helpful for everybody, including our residents. So that is the recodification. Any questions on that?
Can I add something to
Yeah,
that?
yes.
The, as one who's worked with our zoning bylaw for a number of years now, our zoning board of appeal, our building department, our planning department spends a lot of time trying to understand and work their way through applications. Once this is updated, it will make our work, the work of our town staff more efficient, and therefore, hopefully, they can work through backlogs quicker. It should be easier for residents. Maybe they don't have to hire as many professionals like attorneys and engineers and architects and so forth. And it also should make it easier for the business community. So this, I view it as really positive on a number of fronts. I again, as one who uses it, one of the first things Carolyn Murray said is we don't have any charts and tables, which is one of the most important things you usually find in a zoning bylaw. So there's some of those things that are sort of low-hanging fruit, as I think Meredith mentioned, and some of the others are going to be things that we really wanted to take a look at, like changes in the bylaw. But even some of it is the bylaws are not consistent with state law. So there's some things that we know we want to tick off first. And it would be helpful to think about not only just the planning board funding this effort. I'm just gonna put in that pitch, because we know it's expensive, and I'm trying to lay out the benefit overall for the town, not just, from a planning perspective.
I think that's something that we discussed briefly at the board about funding the recodification and those updates. My understanding is that this has happened just over time with changes and things moving very quickly and not being able to go back and sort of clean up these things. In this overview, one, how long do you think this is gonna take? And then in the overview, are there steps being taken so that we don't have to come back and have these same issues in the next 5 or 10 years with making new changes?
So we've talked, certainly not fall town meeting, obviously the deadline is July for any articles. And we will be submitting, we should add, one of the things that we will be submitting for the fall is we think we'll be on track for a short-term rental. And we just received a first draft from KB Law, so stay tuned on that, we'll be letting you know when that gets a little bit further along. But we've talked about having a first, maybe a first issue of changes to be able to be ready for Springtown meeting, to identify, but once we have the audit done, I think we'll know a lot more. Carolyn is wonderful, but we also wanna be realistic and what her time, our time. Right now, we have time to focus on it, so she will be initiating that first, audit but our goal is to have something for Springtown meeting. I think we've at our last discussion with Carolyn, so.
I think your question was, will this have to be revisited in upcoming years? Likely not. This is addressing something that has accumulated over a very long period of time, where the various documents and codes that someone has to review to determine whether or not they could be in compliance or how to be in compliance. It's incredibly complicated. Cheryl spends a lot of time because this is her work, so she's very familiar with how difficult it is, but once the recodification is addressed, it won't be your work. It probably won't be your successor, or that person's successor, or that person's successor. So this should address an issue. We're not gonna have to pay these funds again, in any near future.
And we will have the tools to analyze if there is conflict somewhere. And one of the things right now, some of the language, the definitions are in conflict, what is the median grade, or height of a building, where do you measure from when you're measuring a building? So things like this, once they're cleaned up, everything will be digitized, so it can cross-reference if there is a section that, if we're working on a new bylaw, the attorneys will be able to review that and isolate any conflict when we're writing the new zoning, once this is done.
When we presented to town meeting the site plan review section of the bylaw, we did that anticipating this, thinking that when there's a requirement for site plan review, it's sent it to one place. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with the codification, instead of having to jump back and forth to multiple sections and getting someplace inconsistent cross-references or inconsistent requirements in one section or another. And that leaves our building commissioner to have to make a lot of interpretations or send it to the zoning board of appeal. So our chair of the zoning board of appeal is very supportive of this as well, and so is our building commissioner. And prior commissioners and prior chairs.
And our planning director, who's trying to piece it all together.
Yes.
And
And I think Carolyn put it nicely when our meeting last time, is that at one point this made sense, but over the years, I think it's been kind of grafted on to the zoning bylaw, so now it doesn't make sense. So I think definitions in the middle of the overall package, right? So now part of this effort is to move that to the front and kind of organize it so it's logical and go for it. So like Sean said, it doesn't have to touch again for a long time.
Can I just give you an example? We did a webinar recently where an attorney said that a bylaw said that 10% of the parking lot had to be green space. So what do most people think of when they think of green space? Maybe something landscape, right? But apparently a developer painted 10% of the parking spaces green and said that they met that requirement in the bylaw. And it was challenged, it was upheld in the courts. And so having these green space be something that's defined is a good example.
Words matter.
words matter.
Words
Yeah.
matter.
And words definitely matter to businesses in town, and I know I'm getting a little off topic, but if we're ever going to review the economic development plan as a business owner in town, and I've read the bylaws for my own business, and from year to year to year, there's different building inspectors come in, there's different interpretations. And for me personally, having different interpretations is not good for business. And also it is in conflict with state law. And it needs to be updated if we ever want to attract and retain businesses in town.
So this is a win-win for everyone.
It's just a tool that our building inspector and our staff needs. And as someone mentioned, it's not really a planning board, it's really the town staff, town hall. So I too am an advocate of getting funding from other sources.
So why don't we start with go into the economic development plan, and because I think
Should we do library first?
Or do you-
Like economic development plan might take us a little.
do you wanna go to library, do you wanna just have a quick discussion on
Yeah, quick
library
discussion, so we just haven't had a
Conversation?
chance for any of us to,
Alright,
first to
we'll do
hear,
that first.
we really wanted to hear from the planning board. Library is obviously early days, but it is a potentially big project. And so beyond us just starting with the schools around their recommendations, potentially going into the bid process, hearing from the planning board just on your thoughts on the property, your thoughts on what you've heard or seen for the potential of that plot plan.
Well, I'll start with some.
You wanna start? Yeah,
some
go ahead.
thought. Certainly, you're thinking about what happens if a school goes there or if a school does not go there?
I
What our
think
thoughts
we're looking at both pathways there. I think one, the schools have laid out their plan. It certainly seems to be right now the preferred usage of that place. But if there is a chance that there is, something goes awry and we do have to sort of, change streams and go another direction, what are our options there? I think the school option would be number one.
So my thought typically, like when we've looked at even at daycare centers, we've looked at what impacts there might be for neighbors, so that might be traffic, for example. So, what's the schedule and how does that coincide with any other impacts? What other uses are nearby? That's just something with any parcel and any project. And as far as if there's an addition required, if there's additional parking required, certainly the town in the past has not had any planning board review of town-owned projects. So even though there's things, and the town's not subject to our zoning bylaw necessarily. So there's requirements in the bylaw for parking lots, for example, to have landscaping, so you're breaking up the amount of impervious area. So there's some things like that, if it's a school, that we might want to offer some guidance on how we would look at it if it's a different kind of project. I think if it's not a school, it's something to be, the town needs to be thinking about, because the property's zoned single family, and at just under 5 acres, by the math, you could do 4 single family lots. By the frontage, you could do 3. So if you did 4, you'd have to put a new road in. So you're looking at something which is an assessed value of, I think 13 million or 14 million, something like that on our website. So is that going to be the economic use of a buyer, the highest and best, use for a buyer to have a land acquisition of, say, $2 to $3 to $4 million per parcel to buy the land, and then you still have something you have to do with the building itself. So are we susceptible to a 40B developer? If that's the only other alternative that's not a Dover protected use, so a Dover protected use would be a school, daycare center, house of worship. So I think we need to think about, as a town, if the school doesn't work, what would be the desired use there, and how does that fit into the picture of our economic status, our revenue status, because it's currently tax exempt. Is there a possibility for any tax revenue? So that's a conversation that has to happen obviously with the neighbors, the neighborhood, the public. But I don't think it's one we should ignore, because a school might be the top choice of every person, but we have to think about what a plan B, I think, might be.
Your point is that not only is the land very expensive, but then doing something, taking down the existing buildings, preparing the land for single-family homes, building the homes, that's a lot of investments just to get to those single-family homes, if that was the route.
Right.
That was as a zone, right? So probably doesn't pencil out in that situation. Probably.
In my hat, as
Jumping
my
ahead.
day job as an architect, I think, that you're looking at most likely a 40B, because
Right.
that's going to be what that price point can support.
So I think we're jumping ahead. I I sent a letter to the select board after one of your meetings, and I strongly support, the town, buying the property even without knowing what the end, use is gonna be. I think ownership provides the strongest protection for the future of the property. Ownership creates permanent local control. And I think, as we all know, zoning can change. There are Dover protected uses. There are, state, mandates that come down. And I think long-term, we need to own it. And I would love to see a school go there. I think having a school there would actually sort of help bring the town back together. The land swap was a very divisive issue. Back in 1978, my father was on the Conservation Commission, and he put that land, the Lamb's Woods, in conservation. And I think unfortunately through that process, there were people who were labeled as anti-school when a lot, which was myself labeled as that, when I am pro protection of land and conservation. We're not making any more land, and I think if the school was able to use it, I think that would be a win for everybody. But even if the school decides that it's not, within their program, I still think the town should buy it, and as Winston said a couple meetings ago, it's just for control reasons. We then can control it. We then can decide what is best there, what is best for the neighbors. The neighbors can come in and be part of the process. So I do support the town buying it and then seeing what the future use is. So I support that.
Well, I think it's whatever, it's on the market. It could be gone tomorrow, right? I mean, whatever decision, will be made by the town. It's available, they're accepting offers, so, and I believe the minimum is 10 million, so I think that's been an established minimum. But I have not been inside the building, but from what I've read, it's probably an asset that's usable immediately. It was renovated in 2016, it was renovated also in 2023. It looks to be in very good condition, and may be in equal or better condition than some of the academic buildings that we already have. So it's a valuable asset. It's 51,000 square feet, I believe. I don't think I know well enough how our program how it would fit our program, and we certainly have plenty of expertise within our school officials to see how it might work. I agree with what Hal and Charles said. The math doesn't really pencil for single family residential, even in that neighborhood. I mean, that's one of the most beautiful neighborhoods we have in town, but I think the number for a house, based on math, would probably be, an $8 to $10 million home, maybe minimum, based on land cost, development cost, construction cost for home. So I don't think it'll ever work for single family residential, which creates a problem for us because the alternative is multi-unit residential. And my opinion, I'm not opposed to housing at all, but the idea of a 40B project would not be to disrupt that kind of a setting. That is a historic setting, Adams Street, and I think even the strongest advocates for 40B projects, recognize the importance of allowing a particular neighborhood to remain as it is. So if it doesn't serve an academic use as it has for La Parade, or as it's just a short distance away, I think it would be
and I've shared my views in our discussion with Winston as seeing this as to be a real win-win for our town. It's solving a huge problem of the classrooms, just being overly dense and in size, but to Maggie's point, the piece about the conservation, if we could preserve that, and I think give the schools really a flagship school. I mean, this would be something that I think would attract people back into the school system that may have left. I think this could be a very much of a if we could put the admin buildings, I've been inside, it has been beautifully restored. So the historic house, they've really kept it intact. I think that administrators would love to be in those spaces, which are currently set up as many of them set up as offices. It's really been carefully protected, and then you have, again, new modern classroom facilities that are there. So if this could fit, again, I'm not an expert, we do have experts on the school building committee and those in our administrative, is that Dr. Bailey? Who have said, the leadership team really supports this, so I would absolutely support acquiring this, and if it could happen, it would be great because it would happen much sooner than a new school building could be built, which could be years down the road. So.
I think that's, I just wanna reiterate that last point. If we have a sincere interest in resolving some of the issues that we hear about in regard to our schools, we should do it sooner rather than later. And the pathway to a new school in Milton, I spent 40 years in the construction industry, even from a point in time where you put the first shovel in the ground, you're 2 to 3 years away from the new building being built. And we're not even close to putting that first shovel in the ground. So if we're relying on a new school to solve, the issues that we talk about today, you're in a 4, 5, 6 year time frame. Is that really fair? To the residents in the town, the teachers in the town, the leadership of the schools, or the taxpayers? Right, I don't think it is. So I think Meredith's last point in terms of timeliness for a solution for that problem, this is a great opportunity.
So I think that we're all, not speaking for everyone here, but I think we're all in agreement that the school is the first best option and second and third best option. Are you asking though, if that doesn't work out for, I listened to your most recent meeting, but I think you guys approved an OPM to explore that option, right? If that doesn't pencil out for the schools, are you asking us what could go there?
Or if somebody sweeps in, right, and buys the site tomorrow,
Yeah.
right, which could happen, yeah, it's just kind of like a backup. Like what should we, as stewards of the town, just realizing that we don't just have to eye a school for that site, what would be a responsible pathway to
So if somebody buys that property
proactively dealing
tomorrow,
with the site?
and
Yeah.
say send Liz over to their door, knock on their door and say, we'd like to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because we wanna work with that buyer,
Yeah.
rather than them have something come in that we may not be interested in. And say we want a partnership to work together that's going to work for them, for that buyer, and for the town. And that's really important in so many communities, that open door with the planning department and the commercial or residential building industry is really just super important. So that's.
And I would,
And I think the town has a history of working with applicants to try to figure out zoning solutions. That's been my experience. I haven't been directly involved in anything, but I know that there was special zoning adopted for the memory care, for instance, on Highland. So, yeah.
For Wolcott Woods, which was the Carberry property before, there was a lot of concern about that when it went on the market. Who was gonna buy it, what they were going to want to build there. That buyer and developer worked with the neighbors and with the planning board to craft zoning that town
And
meeting
Mr.
approved, and then the planning board, worked diligently, to approve a special permit that had a lot of conditions in it. And that's the sort of thing that I could see for the Laborie campus if it doesn't go towards a school, is that there's that kind of collaborative effort. That's why I said send Liz there right away. Because that, I think people would say that that was a success. Yeah, you know, for a large piece of property, what would happen?
Well, I would be disappointed in Laborie if they just went and accepted an offer from somebody else. So for all these years, they have been tax exempt. And I believe the town of Milton has good relationships with our institutions in town. BI Milton, Milton Academy, Curry. So I would be extremely disappointed in Laborie if they didn't come to the town of Milton first. So instead of waiting for Liz to get a knock on her door, I would expect that the town of Milton should be knocking on Laborie's door and saying, what can we do to make sure that the town of Milton has the first right of refusal? You know, what pilot contributions has Laborie given to the town all these years? I haven't heard of any.
No.
And I think that should be a big discussion point with them. And I know in other towns that they work with institutions in town. They work with property owners of land that's been zoned agricultural. When you get a tax abatement, if you're a farm, the first right of refusal goes back to the town for an offer to buy. So I would assume that the town of Milton should have the first right of refusal.
We don't have any, like, for clarity, we don't have any legal right of first refusal
Yeah, right.
over the property.
But just good business partner.
But we have been in close contact, I'd say, probably on a every other day basis with either Laborie or their representatives, so that line of communication is open and, but it is being actively marketed, as Sean noted, and, so they have a broker on board who is actively marketing it, and we've been in remaining close contact.
I think to what I've heard from everyone here from our board is the town making all efforts to secure Laborie and then moving forward with whatever their plan will be, whether it will be the school first, or if that doesn't work out, whatever the next thing will be. Most important thing is that the town is gonna make all efforts to acquire the property. To Maggie's point, and the point we've been making here at the board, we do think we have a really good relationship with Laborie, but we certainly can't make them, give us the property. But good stewardship, good neighbors, good continued relationship with Curry. We hope that the time and the years that they have been in the community do play some factor. And hopefully the continuous educational institution as well plays a factor into us securing the property.
Just one thing that I want the group's input on, the process, how we proceed methodically in evaluating the school viability option is fairly straightforward to me. Well, it's complicated and it's a difficult decision, but how we're gonna get there to inform our decision whether to, put a bid on the property, that seems fairly mapped out. I mean, I think we're gonna talk about it more tonight, but in terms of the roadmap we've laid out, in terms of the school committee, setting forth its programmatic recommendation, and hopefully later opining a bit more on how this option weighs against the MSBA option, and then school building committee coming on top of that with some, how they're pricing that out and engaged, an architect, a structural engineer, and, so I see the diligence forming to inform that path. On the Plan B path, if for whatever reason, that gets derailed, and what I'd love your guys' input on is working up the diligence a little bit on and how planning board can be involved in that. On if we find ourselves at some point in that Plan B lane, and I'm not gonna put percentages on it, I think it's non-zero. So I think it's worth trying to kind of move that thinking along. You know, under the umbrella of trying to control the property if we can. I'm interested in like how the planning board, how you could see yourself supporting that thinking along the way and when. For example, I'll put like a couple questions out there. As a group, how do we, you know, how much of that thinking do you wanna, we wanna try to move the ball on pre, you know, transaction? Or, you know, or pre-bid, it's not a lot of time, so there's maybe not a whole lot of realistic possibility, like move along our, you know, recommended use or thinking pre. So do we think not moving that thinking along, given the time constraints? You know, I'm thinking about from the town's perspective, when it's coming to a vote at town meeting, or, you know, for a potential eventual debt exclusion to approve you know, the purchase. What's gonna get approved at that level? It seems like a fairly popular idea. So maybe residents will only need to know subject to further decision of use, you know. How much specificity at that do we wanna, I've been trying this whole time to kind of work backwards, picturing ourselves in, you know, whatever, December, November, with this decision kind of showing up to residents. How much are they gonna wanna know, how far along should that ball be? You know, a couple scenarios could be some work has already happened to sort of try to narrow down what other uses could look like to try to inform that conversation. Or maybe that's just not realistic and you put it to, you know, maybe you tell residents, well, here's what we'll do after acquisition to, you know, engage the community and go through this multi-month process to think about use. So I've just been trying to think about us lining up the different pieces to just inform that, not only the bid or whether to bid in the bid, but also that period from, if we're fortunate enough to, you know, a contingent bid accepted, basically, like where do we wanna be, you know, as elected officials in this kind of going to those different votes along the way? How far should we push that other use diligence is what I've been trying to think about, what's realistic. Again, I see the school decision diligence moving along. I'm trying to kind of think about how far to move that other ball in these short windows. What will help, you know, if one of our objectives is to get the, you know, potential acquisition approved by the town, how much are residents gonna wanna hear that, how far that thinking is. So, you know, those are some big questions, but certainly something I've been thinking about. You know, really valuing like the planning board's perspective on that kind of thinking, use ideas, zoning analysis type of thinking. You know, maybe that's for a later day. I'm just kind of sharing where I'm sort of hovering around, like how to kind of move, what timeline to move that along. But you know, feel free to share your thoughts on that now, or just, you know, I hope we can kind of keep that thinking accelerated, frankly.
John, you wanna add?
Yeah, Nick. We gotta live in the real world. Houses are selling for $1.5 million, $1.8 million. Developer with a lot of money could come down there tomorrow and buy that. And do like a 55 and up. I don't think, we're gonna have to go to the voters and ask for an override. And how long would that take?
To acquire it, to do all the work.
Do all our steps.
It will require a town meeting vote, October, November timeframe, and a ballot question vote either on the state election in November or December timeframe. And I've shared that timeline with libraries, so their understanding of that. I think by the flip side, you know, for potential acquisition, there may be some people looking to buy it with contingent offers, and they've said they don't want contingent offers, but there might be, we'll have to make a contingent offer as well, but our timeline would be like 6 months from now for a resolution. So any, it's gonna be a while, but they're aware that our duration is a little bit longer than a normal buyer might be.
They have to answer the board of directors, right?
Their board of trustees, correct?
Yeah, so if they get a big
And there's a
offer,
relationship with Curry as well in terms of the proceeds, so.
no, I'm just thinking, if they get a big offer, like Sean said, that's out in the real world.
Yep.
You know, I'm just thinking, like, I see what houses are selling for. You know, and that's a desirable area.
So John, the zoning
I know,
and the non-zoning uses of the Dover Amendment and the 40B are the uses that would be non-contingent. Everything else is contingent on a zoning change. So if you wanted to do an over 55 community that's not the 40B, it requires a zoning change. So that's
Only 40B.
only 40B,
no, I
and House
understand
of
that,
Worship and
but,
all that could go in right now.
but some developer company might wanna try to go that way, the 55 and up, it's a desirable area.
But I think Cheryl's saying that in order to do that, you gotta
They have to go to
zoning
Board of
change.
Appeals.
No,
Yeah.
you have to have a zoning change.
You'd have to come to the plan.
You have to go to town meeting to get the zoning change. So it's a process that some developers are willing to go through, but $10 million minimum, not being contingent, knowing that you may not get the zoning.
Before you even tear down the buildings and make the site ready,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, so it's,
So some of the zoning that's there now is to our benefit, I'll say, it's not just for any use.
Correct, correct.
But they could threaten the 40B though.
It could be 40B,
correct,
which-
that's why I brought that
That's
up.
I understand, but they could
That's
still
why
get the sway to go the other way.
Are
They
you
can
pointing
get
out,
persuaded to go the other way, yes.
are you pointing out that time is of the essence, or
Yeah,
that
I
there's
just
no
think
guarantee we get it? Or
If
both?
a developer, that's a pristine neighborhood, I wanna buy it, believe me. I wish we could get someone to give us 20 million. 20, I don't have it. Seriously, not me, I want the town to buy it, but we
And it
got a
has-
long process to do it.
Yes, that's.
But I think there, and this comes back to Maggie's point, we'll make about collaborate too, I think the relationship there with them being in town for as long as they have been, the program staying in town through Curry. I think they have an understanding of how long our process would be, so we're a little unique to any other buyer. And, I'm not a 40B developer, I don't understand their costs, I don't know if it's profitable to do a 40B there, I can't speak to that, I hope it would be that it's not. For us, but there's some things that are in our favor. I don't think Library's given us a date where they would select the purchaser, so we're not sure if they're, waiting and just taking all bids or, just waiting for the right numbers.
And that building, you can move kids in there tomorrow.
It's a great building, great property, so. And I think it could be just a real sort of feather in the cap for the school department. I mean, I think it would make it a real special place, sort of an entrance to come and.
Just wanna come back to Pete's question and comment, if we can. I do think, it's best not to wait until the last minute to start thinking about what an alternative use might be and what path that might need to take. Because there may be somebody who decides to buy it with risk, or assuming that they can make something work there, and if not, their fallback would be the 40B. So they might say, I wanna do an over 55 community, and if I can't get that done, then my default will go back to the 40B. So I do think the 40B at 10 million or above, it's just gonna increase the density of what goes there. If we think about the land acquisition for, let's say, the Canton Ave 40B, 2 parcels totaling maybe 3 million they paid for 116 units, so you can do the math on that. So if you're paying 10 million, you're looking at probably somebody wanting to do a lot of units there. And so that's why I think we need to be ahead of it. So that's my point. I've seen these things come. John, you've seen these come too.
I'm sure I'd have, but Nick, if Library had, if they bought, they had the right to first refusal on the other parcels of land there. And I thought you said, hopefully that moves with whoever buy, if we buy it.
library currently holds a right of first refusal, right of first offer over the Fontbonne campus. So there's a question of does that then go to the
Move on with
buyer of.
Well, that's what I'm
library
looking at
campus?
too.
Right,
That's a big piece of parcel.
it certainly is. So I
Which
guess.
would allow for additional ball fields, and you could add for, you know, sort of an expansive,
But-
long-term.
Is there planning work that should start? Is there a consultant that we should talk about bringing on board to start conceptualizing that Plan B post reuse? Or at least maybe getting the parameters of a scope together to be prepared to move that forward. So I guess that maybe to Peter's
Yeah, I'm
question would
just-
be a little
I'm-
bit
yeah.
I think the question also that we can't forget is that this has been a school, this has been utilized for school for, I mean,
Both parcels.
forever. It's forever, I mean, Aquinas, it's been forever. But what we would want to do is solicit input, community input and neighborhood input, I think, before we did anything. Obviously, if it didn't go to a school, there's other options. I don't know if Milton Hospital would consider, you know, if there would be another school that would be interested, I would like to see probably to keep, because I think the neighbors are accustomed to having a school there, that would be ideal for a first step. But certainly, I think we could begin having conversations, but really having public outreach
Or
with
the
the
neighbor
residents.
down the road a mile.
So public outreach would be an important part,
Milton
so
Academy.
we wouldn't get zoning, we wouldn't have zoning in place, I don't think you're thinking having zoning, but having sort of a plan of how it could be mapped out is certainly something that we can't say tonight what it would be, but we could certainly start talking about it, and talking to Liz, and looking at some
I think
some
part of
options.
it's an educational component to it. Like we've been talking about tonight, like what the proposed acquisition cost is likely to be, how you back into uses based on that. You know, because some people, if you just put out there, what would you like to see there, it may not be realistic, to your point, John. So there has to be, I think, some sort of framework set up first, that here are some range of opportunities for this property that would work within this financial. So let's say the town does buy it for, let's say, 12 million, and it goes to a school, then there's probably not too much additional process, but I still think neighbors are gonna want some process about how it's going to work, where the bus is gonna go, you know, where the car drop off, the pickup's going to go, is there outdoor space, is a playground, where's that going to go? You know, there's lots of still site planning decisions that need to be made. So even that, having a community process around that, I think makes a lot of sense. I don't think necessarily that's all happened a lot on our municipal projects, but it makes a lot of sense to me. But then on the second piece of it, now you've set the framework about what issues you need to talk about, what kind of land uses. If it doesn't go to a school, what else can support that 10 million? What else can the taxpayer see as a way to pay for that 10 million? And what would they like to see there? So then you have to go through the range of uses, and I do think a consultant would probably help.
Liz and Nick would like a new office.
It seems to me you have a 51, as Sean said, a 51,000 square foot building that's occupiable. I don't see like the best thing for the environment would be to tear down a perfectly good building. So is there a way to reuse that building? That would be my first step. What use might be able to reuse that building?
And I just wanna, and I know you were waiting to say, like, I'm not tonight trying to kinda get into the whole, like, more political decision of like, you know, school or not, or all that. I'm really focusing on like contingency planning here and focusing on Plan B, because I see the diligence roadmap for Plan A. So for Plan B, that's what I'm kinda trying to get to.
Right now, what you described as Plan B is being worked out by developers that are considering buying.
Mhm.
So what they do is they'll bring on board a civil engineer and an architect. And that civil engineer and that architect are examining that piece of land and what the options are and what they could do. And they may have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different options. It could be everything from like what happened at Carberry's land up on Canton Ave to
Woodmere.
to a multi-unit residence. So what you described as Plan B is happening right now. Anybody that's looking at this is utilizing you know, whoever they have, their chosen civil engineer and their architect, you know, developing schemes. And those schemes are what you described as what would be your plan B, to get the school to go there. And it's the only way to really do it. You know, Cheryl and Hal have probably done plenty of this. You know, I do a lot of it, not on the residential side, but on the commercial side. But, you know, we'd take a site plan, we'd examine the building and see what are the possible uses for that building. Could it be repurposed into residential? Maybe because some of the floor plans for school buildings don't repurpose well for residential. It's really, really challenging. But anyhow, my point is, Plan B right now, anybody that's looking at that property is doing exactly what you described as Plan B. And we don't have those resources internally, you know, we would have to bring them in.
So, since we have a lot to get through, so we're gonna do the economic development plan, what I'll say is, plan A for us is acquisition. And then that allows us flexibility with, whatever we need to do after. Whether that takes some time in hiring a consultant, whether it's community outreach, or whether the school's plan is the 100% best way forward. Plan A is what we have. I think the plan B that I'm thinking of right now is that if we don't get it. And that's going to knock on the doors, and then us working with the planning board and others in town as to, well, what do we do now, since we did not get this property. I think if we have acquisition, then we can get into the weeds of like, what do we do with it if it's not going to be a school. We really just wanted to hear from you guys in terms of your input and just how we would actually work together for both of those trains. So, thank you.
Okay, so just to move into the economic development plan, I think it's important, you know, that we just, and you all, I think have all received this, but I'll just sort of read through what MAPC, Milton's economic development plan, which the planning board has completed phase 1 and 2 of this, or I should say our consultants have completed phase 1 and 2. The project understanding. The town of Milton will work with MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, to develop an economic development plan with analysis and recommendations to enhance the mix of economic activities to better meet community needs, sustain economic activities, particularly economic activities that, while affording growth and intensification of use, are generally consistent with the town's physical scale of activities, and expand the commercial and industrial tax base. The plan will provide analysis, goals, and actions the town could take to facilitate economic investment within the town's priority commercial, industrial, and mixed-use districts, the priority business districts. Thank you for pulling that up. The plan, while highly dependent on there being productive community engagement, the engagement will seek to identify complementary objectives for each versus competing objectives. The project will include consideration of novel economic development goals and strategies that diverge from traditional economic development approaches. The plan will include a discussion of key townwide drivers, opportunities, and challenges from an economic development perspective. The overarching project goals are: 1, create an economic development plan for Milton's key commercial districts, and 2, identify and recommend goals and strategies necessary to advancing the identified plan. 3, share and support the town's effort to build support for the report recommendation and implementation efforts as a result of the plan. The report will focus on the identification as well as thought out and economically viable goals and strategies supported by the qualitative and quantitative data assessed via the process. Development of specific recommendations on zoning changes and or infrastructure improvements required for a planned implementation are beyond the project scope, although a high-level discussion of such items captured through an analysis of previous studies will be discussed and help to inform the report recommendations. The planning process is expected to begin September. This was September of 2024 at the time, and was expected to conclude by 2025. 5. And there were issues with the funds that were covering this, so the work halted. Priority business districts, the economic development plan will provide analysis and recommendations on the 4 priority business districts identified below. Milton Village Business District adjacent to the Milton Landing and access to the Neponset River, the Central Ave Business District, the Northern Granite Ave Business District. These business districts fall on the east side of town. This project engagement will also assess the data and conditions to understand the potential for expanded commercial activity on the town's west side. There is some resident sentiment that such activities are lacking there. While not the central focus of this engagement, attention will be paid to the potential for the Route 28 corridor to receive additional light industrial flex and or office uses and to be the focus of more intensive utilization. Project process, the process will consist of 1, an analysis of existing conditions of the districts, including broad real estate conditions, not inclusive of parcel or property level analysis. 2, the community and stakeholder engagement, centering on communities and stakeholders' priorities of the priority business districts listed above. And 3, development of the goals and strategies, including a townwide survey and community workshop to inform the prioritization of goals and strategies. And 4, the compilation of a final report with recommendation and presentation to a select board meeting. The project tasks, these have been completed already by MAPC, and I won't read all of this, but it's existing conditions and analysis of Milton's economy. We had a kickoff meeting, review of existing subtasks are kickoff meeting and a review of existing plans,
Right, you don't have to go through all
continuing
that.
regulations.
We can post it.
I won't go, through everything, but
Alright.
basically step 1 and 2 have already been completed, and we were, our last meeting with MAPC was a presentation of their work up until that point. And we were gearing up for a community survey, which, Liz, do you recall, do you know if that went out, that community survey? That's when it, so we worked up until that point. And so I think tonight, the conversation, I think the planning board has discussed wanting to continue with the work at MAPC, but maybe looking at, depending on how much funding we have, looking at maybe diving a little deeper into, maybe we had talked about the west side of Milton. I know Cheryl, you wanted to discuss Randolph Avenue, so I would just open it up to.
So my understanding is that we started this in 2024, process began, and we ran out of funding along the way. So this is the scope and range from the original.
Correct.
Which we are okay with reopening and starting with this scope. No changes in the scope, begin the project again, but we have some issues with funding. So there's an amount, I think we've now, both boards have dedicated 25,000 to continuing, and that leaves us with a gap, I believe, of 30 to 50,000 to finishing it. So we.
30?
So yeah, the original scope
I
was,
have questions about the scope that's written in here, and the business districts that we're focusing on. But I don't wanna,
I'll do,
Yeah.
if we were to take this scope as written and as budgeted, then it was $99,000, of which the town has paid about 18,000 of that, so that would leave approximately $80,000 worth of work under this scope of services, under this fee proposal, of which there is 50,000 dedicated towards, so there is a delta there. But that's where the budget sits, so I'll defer back to the scope.
So it's 50,000 and sort of the delta of needed 30,000 to finish the project, to your point about the scope.
so my main questions around the business districts, the scope as written mentions the west side. Would folks be open to more explicitly highlighting some focus on the west side and where businesses would be focused? So I think assessing data and conditions to understand the potential for expanded commercial activity, I guess that's I guess that's headed in a good direction, but I think we should think about how to more explicitly call out what we would like to see there in terms of recommendations.
Right. So I think these were highlighted because we really, these are our business districts in town.
Existing, that's what I, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So part of this, and what it may be, is some recommendations to really open up, and because I think what we would need, we have identified parcels, they're not all connected.
Yeah.
So we would really need resident input. You know, we have experience with MBTA discussions on where development could go on the west side. But I think changing, you know, looking at doing a new district, we would want to get that input, so.
Well, we've done with the MPIC, there was a study on a portion of the west side of town, that maybe some of that could be added or inform additional community in
Right, I
it.
see, I hear what you're saying, is take a district and say, let's analyze, let's
Yeah.
look at this, and then we can get some input, which could lead to maybe a future overlay zoning of that area.
The process for changing or adding to the scope, given that this is a document and agreement from 2024, is MAPC, would this be okay for us to go back to them and say, here are some changes or additions? And does that change the cost? Not that the cost is the overriding factor, but do we have the ability to change some of the scope, given this is a document that we agreed to previously?
Liz,
The contract is no longer valid, so they would reprice it all. I would expect updated pricing, and I would expect they would be flexible in terms of if we wanna add to, maybe pull some scope out of certain places and add scope elsewhere. I'd say it's very flexible, there's nothing here binding us. I think this serves as a good template to tweak if there's any tweaks that folks want to provide.
right, and because MAPC has most recently worked with us on both the Milton Village and most recently the East Milton overlay zoning that we did, we have a lot of survey data, there was a lot of public outreach, they have a lot to work with, so they might need to do less with East Milton because they've heard rankings of what, you know, what residents would like.
They can pick up and move quickly with it.
They could pick up and move
Yeah.
quickly, exactly, and I think the same for the village, where we could spend maybe more time for, you know, hopefully not too much more money, but again, that would be, Liz has had a conversation, I think, also with the consultant that we had started with. I don't
Yeah,
know if
it
you wanna-
it was several months ago, I haven't had a recent conversation with them. But yeah, I agree with Nick, I think we could negotiate and get new pricing and try to figure out, you know, what the budget will cover and where your priorities are, and then try to plug that gap, essentially.
Liz, we're at such an early stage, you know, making whatever changes that Megan is talking about, or any changes.
Right.
This is a very appropriate time. They're at the very early stages, so whatever we want them to focus on, if it's different than what's written in that contract, this is a great time to do it. And it's probably not gonna change very much from a cost standpoint.
Can I ask one more quick question, just out of my own ignorance here? So the Northern Granite Avenue Business District, where exactly is that? Is that like up where Heritage Hall is, or?
It's just the office building, 2 Granite Ave,
Okay,
that's its own little district.
okay, thank you.
But if there was some thought to change that, that could be discussed, I imagine, but.
So before taking on new commercial across town, I would like to see our focus on pre-existing non-conforming. So we have, most of our businesses are outside the business districts and are there via special permit and subject to zoning changes and neighbor issue complaints. So before taking on new districts, I would like to somehow take on our pre-existing non-conforming to make those businesses more stable and less subject to zoning issues. So I think, to me personally, that should be our first number one task on our scope.
What would that entail?
So it would probably entail getting a list of all of our businesses that are outside the business districts. I did go through the existing conditions plan that MAPC gave to us. And there are many businesses that are not located on that, and then there are also businesses that I'm not sure if even exist anymore. So I had said to Nick, what I'd like to see on the existing conditions plan is by parcel. Where are these businesses? How many businesses do we have in town? Where are they located? Like, for instance, in East Milton, the Rockland Trust Building, that's in a residential district. And within that building, there's all sorts of businesses within that building. And so I'd like to see that address listed and then a list of all the businesses within it. We've heard, through many residents in town that they want different amenities in town, and we hear all the time, oh, do we want another nail salon? But I was trying to figure out how many nail salons do we have? Like, how many do we have? 3? 4? And, and if you look in my industry, we have 3 nurseries in town.
He has a daughter.
And I would never say or exclude another nursery from opening up in town. So I think it's hard sometimes to restrict what type of business should go in a certain location. But it would be nice to see how many nail salons do we have? How many restaurants? We all say we want restaurants, but is it fair to say, oh, the town can support 10 restaurants, but we can't support 5 nail salons? I mean, I don't go to nail salons, so I'm not advocating for more, but I think it would be helpful to have a list by industry and how many businesses currently exist.
I think Maggie's point highlights that there's quite a bit of policy embedded within this plan too, which I think highlights how it probably intersects both of our boards in terms of stewarding the law, which is another, let's come back to that, but on the scope, I would just emphasize, Sean, to your point about input and out. It just seems to me like it's heavy on the east side, and is that, can we shift a little focus?
And we've
towards
spent a
other-
lot of
yeah.
time on the east side, so I think the east side is
Yeah.
like, do we have to take another survey, of community outreach? So I think shifting it, and to Megan's point, and doing more exploring, because that's what our board is hearing, is that we want coffee shops, we want, some amenities that we can walk to and not have to get in our cars. So I think that's definitely worth shifting that.
I think we need to include all of the existing districts and think about where we have businesses outside of the districts and whether we should change our boundaries. Part of it we can think about relative to our zoning recodification we're talking about, because right now those businesses that are outside of the business districts, and a lot of them that are even within the business districts, have kind of complicated approval processes associated with them. And so that makes it harder for businesses, that might make it harder to attract more diverse businesses. So there's policy, that there's zoning, and then there's I think some economic analysis as well. I was looking through the existing conditions report piece that we did get, and it refers back to 2015 in the retail leakage, so something we talked about recently, which is Milton taxpayer dollars being spent in other communities. And one of the things I would like to add to this scope is that component to it. Like, look at what our leakage is today. That was 10 years ago plus, that was in that 2015 master plan. I recently was reviewing a market analysis and fiscal impact analysis that was done in the last year or two in Belmont, where they asked a consultant, what would it take for us to change our residential commercial tax revenue from a 95%, 5% to a 90%, 10%. And they had a lot of analysis that went into that. And so that gave them information to make decisions about whether they thought they could ever get to that 10%. But they had that data there, and it looked at regional and local market conditions for housing, for office, they had a lab use. But here we have Bid Milton, which is expanding a lot. Is there some thing that we should think about with that with respect to our economic development plan? We have a memory care center opening, the hospice just reopened. It was recommended on our master plan that we should do a medical overlay district for zoning. And so that it just makes these, if we think that there's some opportunity for these businesses in town, we should plan for it a little better so that it makes the process smoother. And I would like us to think about that. That's a much higher level than I think a lot of what's in this scope. Where do we see that Milton's not taking advantage of opportunity? Where is that leaking out? Is that Bid Milton office space leaking to Quincy? Are our retail dollars leaking to all our adjacent communities? And can we bring some of that back in to help with our budget challenges? So I don't disagree about what you said about what we should look at where, and Maggie, what you should look at, but I also think we need to elevate it and look at more potential.
So I think, in the interest of time, I've heard a little bit, and what we're saying here is that we would all like some more input on the scope. So, if we could set a timeline or a calendar, to Liz or Nick talking with MAPC about how we're going to change or add the scope when we need to have those changes in, which I think would require perhaps us in some capacity meeting again. Or I don't think emails would be good enough for us to do that in getting to a scope. Maggie's point about businesses outside of business districts as well as listing of those businesses. John has repeatedly said in our meetings about empty office spaces and commercial spaces. Cheryl's point as well, which I'm forgetting right now, sorry Cheryl. And then Megan's point about
Retail leakage.
Retail leakage, that was, thank you. Always
I've
got my
never
back.
heard of that in my life,
Always got
but
my
now
back.
that's a term.
Retail leakage, Megan's point about the west side of town, and then I also have a thought of, which I don't know if this could happen, but that since we have an outside consultant, instead of us telling them where to go and study, if they just came into Milton and looked at Milton, just gave us an idea of where things could actually work. That's an idea that I thought, if they just came in and said, these are the places to where you should have your business districts. These are the places, if you can do it over again, would be very successful, these things folks are asking for, if that's possible. And I think the biggest thing for us to discuss is how we pay for it. Because we're gonna go in, ask MAPC for some changes in scope, maybe it changes in cost, maybe it doesn't. I think we had two potential ways of paying for this. Should we discuss those now and then think of the way that we can come back with these changes in scope?
Sure, I think, the first one at all times is always just going to town meeting and requesting an additional appropriation from free cash for a one-time expense such as a study. So that's always an option at the town meeting vote. And it could be lengthy. Alternative would be looking within the existing. It's too late for fiscal 26. A week ago, we're not going to find money. We have a snow and ice deficit that we need to deal with as well. But looking at the fiscal 27 budget, if there's any surplus funds in the select board budget, but alternatively within this planning board's, your plans and studies budget is $85,000. So it would make sense to finalize this scope, maybe utilize some of that funding, and then the ask at town meeting is to put that money back into place. So maybe progress using some of the planning board's appropriation, but preparing an article to replace that money for the fiscal 27 work that the board might work on. So I think those are two options. They both kind of hinge on a little bit of town meeting action. The second option would be a little bit quicker if we get to a place where we have a scope and a fee that everybody's agreeable with. And we can also kind of poke around in terms of where the selected budget is at if there's any additional funding. I think broadly those would be the ways that we can grab some additional money for this.
Could we also reach out to, if we're gonna create new zoning for BI, should we reach out to BI to help contribute and pay for through a pilot,
This is very explicit that there will be no zoning coming out of this.
but for a pilot, who has contributed, this past year and, to their pilot, and how much have we collected? Can we do a more robust outreach?
We have a pilot committee, we
Pilot
have
committee
tasked
is
that
hard at
committee
work
with
with,
the Milton Hospital work, but it's Milton Academy, Curry College, and Wakefield already have contributed
Well, it's
on an
not good to
annual
go out
basis.
to Curry at this point when we're trying to work with them to purchase another.
It might be
restaurant.
part of the
Curry's been-
negotiation.
Curry's been a consistent contributor.
Yes.
They have.
John?
I just wanna thank the 4 veteran planning board members, you've had a few tough years. I've been mad at yous quite a bit, but I'm living with it. And we're all sitting in the traffic, so we're all involved in it, so I just wanna thank all 4 of yous. You did a great job under not great circumstances, and the town's lucky to have yous. And Mr. Munger, we're lucky to have you too,
Thank you.
but they've had a few tough years.
John, thank you for your service, all of it.
Thank you.
I'm
What you do as a board member, but what you do, which I don't think you get nearly enough
That's all
recognition for, all around town.
alright, don't worry.
Well, we appreciate it.
Wish I had 15 million to buy that property,
Yeah.
give it to the town, cause I don't think we're gonna move fast enough.
And just, I think in closing, I think this is a great first step of communication, which was our goal. I think Cheryl's highlighted it, it has, some towns do include the planning department in their site plan, process. Early in the stages when they're planning a new facility or a new project. It is helpful because that's what we do on a regular basis, is review sites for potential, problems that could arise and just even how a building is sited, on a piece of land. So that is something that some towns do include, and I think, we would love to be part of that on future projects, when the committees are being assigned, or looking at new buildings, but.
Can you give me an example?
Well, currently, some towns, it depends on what town, whether it's the fire department did come to us, but they pretty much finished all of the initial drawings and architectural drawings, and it was, there weren't many changes that could be made. I think there were little things that we tweaked at that point. Talking about landscaping and trees, the central office, this project took down a huge amount of trees, so we tried to help with, preserving as much green space as possible. But that was late at the game. We've never typically been involved with school building projects. Some towns, like Easton, for example, they're involved, and I don't think we need to be on every level, but ball fields and different playgrounds and parks, their planning department is part of that, so just something to keep top of mind, when determining, I don't know, other than school building, everything, fire stations. Fortunately, we'll get Atherton underway quite soon, and we're lucky to be sitting in this building tonight with the preservation of the original old fire station, so that was good work and a good committee, so just something to think of, maybe having a representative from planning board just to be a liaison in projects.
I don't think you mentioned on, one quick thing, on the short-term rental bylaw, we spoke about that being possibly a general bylaw rather than a zoning bylaw, that we would work on the bylaw and present it, but hopefully that would be a joint kind of article, because it
Yes.
wouldn't fall under our jurisdiction, it would either fall under the select board or the board of health or both. So heads up
Which
on
would-
that.
Which would sort of expedite the process and help.
That's working together, right?
Yeah, and that was, Carolyn Murray, our, from KP Loss, made that suggestion. And we'll have it teed up and ready to present to you, and, certainly,
And one last thing for those who might be watching,
town meeting.
there were several residents who came to the planning board and asked us to take a look at this. They felt it was an issue in their neighborhoods, and that's why we prioritized it, just for those who are interested in how we arrived at that.
While you're still in the, oh, go ahead, John.
I don't know if your group, but Armstrong's property is getting developed, the first phase, and they shook the contractor down for new policemen new police car, fire gear, and a couple of firemen. I don't know if your board has the power to, when these developers come in, not business developers, but housing, to kind of shake them, like I said, you can't insult them. You can go right at it, and at the end of it, they'll love you. They'll
Was
they'll
that a
give you.
40B project? Was that a 40B?
Yeah, Armstrong.
Is it, which one, the one in Braintree?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's an MBTA Communities project. That area of sort of mitigation and what have you, it can be sort of a tricky space. You know, and it has to be really carefully connected to the impacts of the development, so, yeah, it's
well, we can open our eyes, maybe we could proceed with that.
Just while you're still thinking about the short-term bylaw, I think we should seriously consider any additional money we can get out of that in terms of local surcharges or what do you call them, impact fees. It's
Yeah.
probably not much, but could be a deterrent factor there too. So, I mean, if it does come to us, I'll certainly be thinking about it then too, so I encourage you guys
That's
to.
something we definitely talked about and looking at, and we were surprised how many towns don't charge impact fees.
But Carolyn Murray also cautioned about that, because there's a recent case, I think, where you have to show that fee is
It's tied directly.
tied directly to an impact from that short-term rental. Can't go to a ball field, can't go to support the Little League, can't go to, it has to go to a direct impact of that short-term rental. So
So maybe just a
most of the
surcharge.
towns aren't doing it,
Yeah.
but there is the other
So if
fee.
you go to roads.
Two fees, yeah.
There's two fees.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe just do the easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we wrap, to take away with us on the economic development plan, the timeline on us making changes as well as the options for funding and amounts, and something to take away from this. One thing that we did not get to, and perhaps in our next meeting, I do wanna talk about how we can have a better relationship, whether it's the planning board or all our boards together with developers that come in. We're talking to them about what they're going to put in the buildings. If that's been the norm, if it's happened at all. I can say I have spoken to some business owners in town who feel that the fees that are being asked, some of the developments have prevented them from opening things that folks would have liked. So I don't know if there is a way we have in our relationship with the developers, and particularly with local business owners, that we're talking about this being a space where financially business owners can open a space and still thrive. That we're not, that we're making this actually a business friendly environment for spaces, in whatever way we can. For next time.
Next time.
It's a trailer.
Yeah. That's good, sounds good. Thank
I
you.
think you have to adjourn.
We do, yes. Can I have a motion to adjourn from the planning board?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Yes.
Thanks.
Select board, you have to stay.
Yeah, I know. Okay, good to see you. Nice to see you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Alright, and with that, we'll move to item 5, Library College closure and sale. And we have Superintendent John Faley and School Committee Chair Mark Loring joining us. Good evening, thank you.
Thanks for waiting.
So, I'll pass it to Nick in a second, but we just wanted to convene to talk about, the school committee's decision about Laboret. We have not had a chance to hear from you directly. I do understand that you sort of put a position forward as to how you think the program would work. And also in the conversation tonight, I think us talking about communication with our residents about what the potential is at the library site and how we see it moving forward, just so our parents are informed.
No significant updates at this time, as had been mentioned by Sean in the planning board conversation, that the site is now being actively marketed, they have a broker on board, there's information online about that seeking buyers. They've said generally they're soliciting offers over the course of the next month, which tracks with kind of what we've been hearing from them all along. I kept you posted in terms of the school building committee's work and what they're marching towards an end of July timeframe for some information. The architects and the engineers did a walkthrough library on Monday. We had moved forward with land best for the appraisal. The appraiser also walked through the library on Monday, so he's done his site visit. So as we get information back through that, we'll keep the board posted. After our conversation last week, we had a conversation with traffic engineers about potential scope broadly in terms of what they'd be looking at on transportation traffic, just to get that ball rolling. We'll report the school building committee once anything is generated on that. So we expect kind of a rough proposal by the end of this week. And then just kind of the other pieces that we're working on is an overview of how an acquisition would work procedurally, but also financially, what that might mean on a taxpayer front, what we'd be asking of taxpayers, and then also just quantifying in terms of what's our carrying cost for that building going to be. If we were to own it, what is our cost going to be to just kind of keep it maintained, functional, and safe, and then lastly some work around identifying and mapping out the various options within the school. So that's kind of the work that's been going on since we last spoke, and I know there's some questions on the school, so I'll just turn it over back to the board in terms of where we want to be.
I think we pass it to the schools. Just share where they are.
Sure. Sorry, we don't have a planned presentation here. But again, thank you so much for letting us be here and share a little bit of an update. School committee has talked about this at 2 meetings. And essentially the things we've decided is, one, the committee has directed the superintendent and his team to kind of investigate La Brea, to look at and think about what type of educational program does it appear could fit, and what would fit based upon kind of the educational needs within the district. And so the superintendent and his team did that. They did a site visit, observed. I'll let them talk more kind of about what they saw, but essentially did that, came back to the committee, shared some more ideas about La Brea. We had some questions, gave some pushback, or some I guess further areas of thinking that we asked the superintendent to look at. They continued to talk internally, came back with us, and ultimately kind of through that robust discussion, talked about kind of 2 potential options really for La Brea. One being the pre-KK program, which y'all discussed. That's the option that we asked the school building committee as kind of a support in terms of helping us kind of understand what is possible on the site. We asked the school building committee to kind of direct the architect that they were hiring to focus on that as the option. That was mostly because our understanding was the scope of the architects in order to stay under kind of public procurement thresholds, because at the time restrictions were, the architect really could only look at one option. And so we picked the pre-KK option. That seemed like a priority that the district said could be a potential good fit there. And at the same time, we know that the MSBA process itself is still moving forward. And once we have an architect and OPM fully on board for that, we now have an OPM, but once we have the architect, that architect through the MSBA can actually look at La Brea for a K-5 building, because that is kind of still part of the MSBA process itself. And so kind of those are the 2 paths we are continuing to go down. Obviously, a pre-K through K program is a much smaller program. If that doesn't fit on the site, then we know the K-5 won't work, and so can kind of throw that away. But those are that's the discussion we had. And so again, kind of the votes that the school committee has taken is, 1, ask the school building committee to have the architect focus on a pre-K option, and so we're excited to get that information back from the architect to help inform the discussion. And then also again ask superintendent and his team on what they think can fit programmatically, kind of at a very high level. I just make sure to name that for everybody in the public. We are trying to move very quickly in order to be competitive. I have many of the same concerns you've raised, John, about just our ability as a town to kind of be competitive, and I certainly look to this board to whatever y'all can do, and Nick obviously to manage that aspect since that's outside of the school committee. But we are trying to move quickly in order to try and get as much information as we can for us and from the school department, and ultimately kind of pass that over to y'all with kind of what we're thinking about as it relates to how the site can work for addressing the school overcrowding issue, so that they'll make the determination as to whether or not to move forward with the purchase. I'll pause there and I'll pass it over.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. First of all, I want to thank Nick for all the work he's doing, and Sean O'Rourke and the building committee is doing behind the scenes with this, and the work with the select board and talking with MSBA and really engaging with Labouré. It's been very helpful. This is a unique opportunity for the town. The leadership team felt strongly that a pre-K program would be the best option for that site. And we're also well aware that if this site doesn't work, we have a really hard-working school building committee that's been doing the planning for a 7-8 preschool off the Guile Road site that we feel very supportive of as well. They've done a lot of work on that. The advantages of a pre-K program is it does relieve space at all 4 elementary schools, which has been the primary bottleneck of students. It does relieve space at the high school because the administration in the business office, superintendent's office, the special education and other central office spaces will be moved to the Labouré site and free up space at the high school. And if you were around back when the high school was built, those spaces were dedicated to guidance, music, classroom functions. They were never designed to host the central office function. So the high school is a growing building. The 9 through 12 population is growing at the high school, so we'd love to be able to get that space back. The other upside to the Labouré site is actually to the point of some of the planning board folks, where we're taking an existing building and renovating and using space that's already available as opposed to taking over space that would be open currently. So it seems to be very green and friendly in that sense. But the downside of this is that it doesn't really impact the middle school enrollment challenges that we have that are probably the least challenging of the 3 levels, but it does not address that. So this pre-K program is unique to the opportunity that's been presented to the town through the sale of the property. We're trying to check the boxes that it will fit for the needs of the town and the school department, but there are some boxes that it doesn't fit, which is the remedying of any kind of middle school challenges we have in space. So it does take care of our elementary enrollment challenges, our high school enrollment challenges. It does present a very unique opportunity for the town to use the space for a very unique opportunity, but it does not provide space for middle school. That said, I still think the positives outweigh the negatives. I think that we've talked to Dr. Fish at the middle school. He feels that he has adequate space to make things work. And when we had Sean O'Rourke at our school committee meeting, he was very aware of that there's pieces that are definitely going to work for the big picture of the town's needs of space and over enrollment, and that the middle school would be something that we'd have to start thinking about a plan B for if it didn't in fact become a problem moving forward. But I think the community needs to hear that it does certain things really, really well. It's a good fit, and there's just this one piece that doesn't work. So that has to be part of the decision making that we have moving forward. The other parts that I think are positive as well is the ability to, if we're able to acquire the space, and it is a school that goes there, it might just advance the timeline a bit to be able to renovate and move in quicker, as opposed to going through the MSBA process if we do for the 7-8 building in preschool. It does take a little longer. I think the estimation of 2 or 3 years versus 4 or 5 years, and so there's definitely some upside to taking advantage of this opportunity. And I know we've met at different times where, just as a town, I just think it's great to be able to purchase an asset that could be controlled by the town and not at the whim of a private party would be great for the town, period. So the leadership team is very excited about the opportunity, for sure. And we're been in contact with Sean O'Rourke. We already have put down a projected space needs assessment that I have in front of me that I'll email to him tomorrow. We're setting up a meeting with the architect for either this week or early next week, so they can have whatever they need from us to be able to do their assessment, and provide that high cost or high level view of what this would look like if it was gonna be turned into a school. So all that work's been happening behind the scenes.
Thank you. Open it up to numbers, questions, comments. Mr. Sherry?
Thanks for what you guys are doing. I mean, I've heard from folks that, that they've just been impressed about there seems to be acknowledgement that it's sort of a tight timeline here, but of the level of diligence that the town is going about considering this. So thank you. Watched all the school committee conversations on this. I think they've been very clear. I have a few questions. One on sort of the parent/community engagement side of things, the other on deliverable from school committee and district leadership just over the next short-term stretch here. I guess let's just start with going order of, engaging folks and, maybe, I don't know if you guys have, how much community input we've received to date, or if you have a view on, how that might progress, particularly parents of this option. I mean, from my perspective as a parent, I think the communications coming from your, different, whether it's you, Superintendent Phelan, or from the school committee, I mean, that's all clear, and I think the word is out there about that option. In terms of written communications, I'm thinking about appropriate additional engagement along the way, and maybe some of that's post-acquisition, I'm not sure, but it's certainly, I mean, I think you kind of started with that, Winston, when you mentioned, inviting thoughts on community engagement, but, and I think that's twofold. I think that's one, inviting feedback on the feelings of this project, and two, keeping expectations clear about, where we are in this project. Like, I think if we are fortunate enough to acquire this in, conditionally in August, I don't think we're in the position to say for sure yet, it's 100% for a school, I'm not sure, but I guess I'll pause there. If you have thoughts on, touch points for engagement, if you've been thinking about that.
So, this is a tight turnaround, it's on the market, the town has to decide whether they're gonna buy it or not. We're the programming people, you guys the purchase people, and as a school building committee, other building folks. If we do purchase this property, we would absolutely wanna go out to the public and let them know what we were thinking, why we're thinking it, are there any alternatives? And I think Winston, you had mentioned that, if the town just bought it because they think it's a good idea to secure the property, it would give some flexibility for the schools to be able to think differently if we wanted to. Right now, we're only exploring the pre-KK option because we have limited funds and limited time, and we wanna be able to show the public something that we would be able to do with this that made sense. But I think if the town outright purchased the property, then the schools in the town could partner in what that could look like for the town and have that outreach that I think some folks would want to be able to provide feedback and input into the process. So definitely open to that happening. But I do think that might be post-purchase, just because of the timing, it's an open market situation, but I'm not the boss of that.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree just on, I think there will need to be more significant engagement with the community about the design and the implications of moving kindergarten students right away from kind of what right now are more neighborhood schools into kind of more central space, bus versus being able to walk with their older siblings. Those are conversations will need to be had. I don't think people are paying really close attention. We're not getting many emails, I can say that. I mean, it's the end of the school year. People are dealing with a lot. They're about to go on vacation. Like, I don't blame anybody for not paying attention, but it's just not a very good time to really be able to get parental eyes and focus on this. I think, again, I appreciate the superintendent has shared information and some of the updates around this to try and be transparent. We, again, talked about at school committee, our viewing numbers are not quite as robust as your viewing numbers, but even still, even if they were, that still wouldn't be kind of, it's not many eyeballs as maybe we want. So I agree. I think we need more community engagement. I just think within the timeline and trying to understand, like, we ourselves don't even know really enough at this point to go and say it's a pre-KK. We are talking about that at an extremely high level until we get some more information from an architect to say, yeah, that's actually feasible and here's like how it would look. And by the time we get that, from my understanding of the timeline, y'all are gonna have to make a decision to purchase, and we're not gonna have a whole lot of running room to have a lot of time to kind of engage folks, unfortunately. But I agree with John on the point of, I think the line of conversation around it'd be a good asset for the town to control and be able to have input as to what happens. And hopefully that's the school in order to help our space overcrowding needs, but if not, if it's something else, I agree with that. At a personal level, I can't consider that as representative for the school committee, but I think that'd be a good idea for the town.
It could be a nice addition put onto the side of that building too, which would help, great. And if this would happen, this would be the third mansion the administration's going into. The one at the cemetery, the one up at Milton, Flatley's project,
Howard Johnson's mansion.
Yeah.
That was the Howard Johnson's
and
original
then
house. Yeah,
this.
I agree.
We like mansions for the
I do.
administration.
I'm already here for a year, John. I'm not looking to live there. I just want what's best for the town. But I remember the Howard Johnson's mansion. We were there for 2
And
years.
there was the one right there at the cemetery, right across the street.
Yeah.
I think your point though is right in that even with the pre-KK option, an addition is gonna be necessary. In any of these, the existing square footage and layout is not gonna be sufficient, is our current understanding, and so maybe the architect will tell me we're wrong, but yes, an addition is gonna be
So
necessary.
it could potentially help out with more
So-
of your needs.
Yeah, I mean, again, you got cafeteria, right,
I
garden
know.
space, playground space, like, they're just, it is a college, essentially, space, so it is not designed for little kids right now, and so it would need a lot of interior renovation plus, an addition.
Is there a design estimate at this point yet? I think the last time I talked about this with someone, the school building committee was evaluating what the potential design options would have to be, or the design requirements to make it suitable for the program. Is there a cost estimate on that yet, or when do you think we would hear what that is?
So Sean has just contacted us over the last 2 days. We are going to be sending him our projected space needs to give to the architects.
Okay,
And
so we're
that's
not
the
at that
process.
point yet, yeah,
Correct, yeah.
okay.
Cost estimate for the construction or for the design?
I guess, right, so, I mean, they all lump into a total project cost. But I guess the design would determine the construction cost, obviously. So I don't know if,
Yeah.
once we get the design, then you can get the projected construction cost. But yeah, in the way I think about things, just wondering like where we are in getting to a firmer cost estimate for the overall project.
Yeah, I think that's important.
And
to
how
get
that compares
clarify.
to the existing project.
the MSBA. Yeah, so I can clarify from a school building perspective, again, an architect has been contracted with, the cost is, I don't know exactly, but under $30,000 is kind of the
okay.
design cost. And again, that's in order to cut scope, we're sort of only looking at the pre-KK project idea. The goal at the end of that is that they will have a rough kind of design, not even schematic, so even kind
Okay.
of rougher than that, of just kind of boxes that, might be a little bit better than boxes on a paper. But like, how do these things fit on the site,
Like
given,
a 5 to 10% design or something?
yeah, maybe,
Okay.
like, given kind of some of the space needs and some of the conversations with the department, right, we want these to be, somewhat helpful and not totally based
Sure.
out of nothing. So they'll take that, they'll put that together, We are having the structural engineer look at the space as well as just an aside to try and inform cost projections, right, and is there anything of concern? And then separate, we have contracted with a cost estimator who will take kind of the really
Yeah.
high-level architectural designs and be able to provide a estimated rough cost estimate of what it
Yeah.
would cost to, carry out those designs and construction. So that,
And would the projected site acquisition cost and the cost estimate that you're talking about from this be the total that we would go to town meeting with?
no, well, I can let Nick, my understanding, no, the only thing we go to town meeting with at the start would be the site acquisition. Cause you wouldn't
Okay.
wanna go with a number, the number is gonna be a rough guess number, like it'll be
Yeah,
an
right.
informed number to just let us know generally how cost effective is this versus the Guile Road project, which obviously has no land acquisition cost, is a larger facility and is a new construction, and so therefore there are other cost implications for that. But give kind of the goal I think here is to try and give an apples to apples comparison on what those two pathways could be in terms of cost to the town, so that there can be an informed decision. But the initial ask of town meeting and of the town as a whole would just be on the land acquisition cost. And then we would work with a new designer or this designer, I don't know, to refine the designs, really get to a much
Get
more
to
than schematic
100%,
design,
yeah.
yes. And then get cost estimates from that.
So we'd have to do 2 debt exclusions for this?
Yes, the first one will be acquisition of the property. The only nuance to that I'll add is if this project were to proceed outside the MSBA pathway, we would need to appropriate money for design to get it to the point to be ready to come back for the second ask of town meeting, which would be the
Right.
project budget with the debt exclusion there for. But the main pathway right now, the first ask would be the acquisition as a standalone and to return for a project request.
Okay.
I think we discussed months ago, that story and timeline is something that we are very much gonna owe to our residents. As in, one, going to town meeting for acquisitions, if everything works out. Two, if it's going to be a school, by that school, what it alleviates, what the space impacts are. Difference between Labouré site versus the Guile Road site, difference in if it's K to 5 or 7 to 8 or pre-K and kindergarten, the impacts of that. And then also design and then coming back for construction or renovation and all those pieces. We'll owe that entire timeline, narrative, story, and reasoning to
And the
every
why
resident and the
behind
whys,
each step.
which would be really really important. Also knowing that, the impacts of are there more teachers, are there not more teachers, that entire piece is what our parents and residents are gonna need to know, because we have a few really big things going on at the same time. We're gonna do Atherton, we're gonna talk about Labouré, we're gonna be 2-3 years down the line. This has to be something where no one feels that they're being surprised, and the reasoning behind what we're doing here at the town for the long-term benefit, even though in the short term it may seem a lot. It's gonna be a lot of this.
My other question on the deliverable from you guys, if you think about that slide that I don't know if it's a school committee slide or a school building committee slide, that it sort of shows the roles of this phase, school committee and district leadership, and your focus is on school building committee, attach a price to it, us, assess feasibility of purchase. On your slide, there's a couple responsibilities that I'm trying to visualize, like maybe maybe they're embedded with your comments now, and maybe it's a little bit also during the later phase that Winston talked about, but it's sort of the bottom two, and sorry, we're not looking at it, but it's evaluating the impact on our existing overcrowding problems is the one, and I'll read the other and I can say them both again. Evaluating the Labouré option versus the MSBA option. To me, those are a little bit more of like a quality comparison, and then also talking about like how long would this path sort of cover us on the overcrowding issue? I mean, those are deep substantive questions. I'm not expecting like tonight to touch on those, but are those on your radar, and when do you see that sort of conversation I mean, don't get me wrong, like I'm hearing a little bit of it already.
Yeah.
I just don't know if you have like a thought in your mind of you know, the presentation or the discussion on that.
Yeah, I think what we're waiting on, what we need is, we have theoretical ideas on what library can provide.
Yeah.
We have more clarity on what the 6-7 Gatto Road project can provide, given how far school building committee was able to move that work forward in terms of the designs, in terms of the site is acquired, in terms of cost estimates. We got a lot more of that right before we ended up going with MSBA. That will change it somewhat, and so we don't have that clarity kind of through the MSBA project. But I personally feel like the school building committee was able to get us really far with kind of what a 6-7 project at Gatto Road could look like. We are a couple weeks, a month into
Right,
La Brea, and so we just don't quite have that information as a comparative. But to your point, it is absolutely gonna be a question of how many classrooms does this, save us, does this get us back at our overcrowded elementary schools? How many spaces does this give us back at our high school? And what does that mean to those kids at those? And how does that compare to the spaces we would gain if we did the originally planned kind of Gatto Road 6-7 site? The library site is going to be smaller than the Gatto Road site. It's a smaller parcel. It's 4.7 acres versus over 6 acres. So it is a smaller parcel. The expected enrollment for a pre-KK option is much smaller than a 6-7 pre-K option, obviously. So, a smaller project is going to have less significant impacts on the overcrowding. A smaller project is also cheaper, right? And so those are just the trade-offs that I think we as a school committee will need to talk through. Ultimately, y'all will as well, and ultimately the town will, right? Because this isn't actually a decision that the school committee makes. It is a town meeting and a town-wide decision, but I think the school committee's voice in trying to drive towards one outcome or another will be an important part of that, and so that definitely is a conversation we need to continue to have. But I think we are a little early just because we're not quite sure what La Brea can get us, and so once we have that, I think we can get more tangible about weighing those differences.
I agree.
Just real quick, I was able to, I'm on school building committee, so in the context of that, I was able to do a brief tour to observe overcrowding in Cunningham and to a lesser extent Collycott, and I just want to pause and you can still see the visible examples of that, and just want to recognize the teachers and administrators over there for they, despite that, manage it exceptionally professionally.
There's a lot of them. You can see them on Edge Hill Road parking.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you mentioning that, because I do think we've just been in the process of school building for so long, and again, hats off to, I've been on the committee a little bit longer than you, but so many of those members have been on there for 7-8 years at this point, so we've been working on this for a long time, and I think we can get numb to that experience. I think folks have said it well in that, the MSBA would not have invited Milton into the school building process if the state did not feel like Milton had an overcrowding issue. They have limited funding available to them, they have lots of needs, lots of requests they get on an annual basis, and so I think, the school building committee, the school committee, the past select boards have named time and time again about the overcrowding is important, and I appreciate all those members who did that, who predate me. But I think just again for folks in the community to understand that, this is not just Milton's perspective. This is like folks who look at overcrowding across the entire state have come to our town and said, "Yep, you need some support," and so have invited us into this process. So I appreciate you raising that here.
Thank you. I'm actually, your framing of if schools being willing to adjust, assuming that we do make a purchase, really changes the way I thought about that. Because because I thought it kind of went hand in hand going back, we gotta purchase it, but then still have time to review and think about what was best, and that was something right away, it's really helpful, for me, but if there are no other questions, we can think of that.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help, we appreciate all the
Thank you.
support, very much.
You don't wanna stay a couple more years, Mr. Fagan?
We have 12 big months coming up, so that'll be good.
We can't persuade you to stay.
You're a good persuader, so you never know, John.
I'll buy you coffee every day of the week.
I'll meet you at 7-Eleven on Houston Ave, we'll have coffee on
All right.
Sunday. That was our old meeting place.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
So,
help.
thank you guys. Alright, we'll move to item 6, special town meeting date, timeline, and potential warrant articles. I believe Sue Galvin's going to join us. How you doing, Sue?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
It was a very interesting meeting.
By the time
I
you're
was
done, you
very
can go
glad.
open your office for tomorrow.
I might. No, I was glad to be here and hear all the important information that you folks were discussing.
So Sue, I think you're gonna share with us your feeling on potential special town meeting dates for the fire station, potentially that Ray, as well as the state election and ballot questions, so the floor is yours.
All right, so I had the opportunity to go to a town clerk convention. And during that, we talked about the upcoming November election. Currently, there's about, so there'll be about 19 office positions that will be on the ballot. 5 of which are gonna be for Blue Hills Regional Voc Technical School. So we will be voting on Avon, Braintree, Canton, Dedham, and Randolph's school committee members. So that takes up a bit of our ballot. I'm gonna just digress a little bit and go backwards. So in 2022 state election, to just give you a comparison, we had 3 pages, so it was a total of 2 card ballots. There was 5 questions, plus roughly about the same amount of offices. This election, there's a potential, there was initially a potential of 11, 2 have been taken off. So right now, as it stands, we have 9. Now, that number could change. If the town was to put a question on the ballot, first of all, we can only put up to 3 on a state election. So I don't know how many you folks are considering, but there is a limit of 3. The town's questions would be last. So we're looking at probably 3 cards for the ballot. Where our questions would fall might be on the back of the 3rd page. So potential areas that I see could be problematic. We do a substantial amount of vote by mail during a state election. I don't have the numbers yet because they're an ongoing moving target. But if I was to give a guesstimate, somewhere between 5,000 to 10,000 applicants. Which is great, you know, because I love to see people get out and be engaged and vote. The problem with that is when ballots are mailed home and there's multiple pages, somebody in good faith could think they put all the pages in that envelope. We do not know that it doesn't include all those pages until those ballots are going through the machine on election day. There's no point, and there's no way to contact those voters once it's submitted to us. So there's a great potential that although we might have very good numbers of voter turnout, our questions may not, may get a lot more blanks than we would like. 9 potential ballot questions, that's a lot. of reading for the voters. We would have to do some very heavy marketing, in my opinion, to make sure that the voters are aware that there are two or three questions, one question on our ballot. The red book that comes out that the Secretary of State prints, that would not include any of our information or of our ballots. We're not allowed to give a yes, nay on our questions, which can be a drawback because people will get their red book, decide how they're gonna vote, and see these other questions, and if they haven't been engaged, may not respond to those. So I'm painting all negatives, and I don't mean to. But I'm just trying to provide you with an opportunity to make decision based on the fact that there could be, although it's a great pool of voters, it might not be as great as we would hope.
So what would be our alternative?
So the alternative would be to have a special election. So as we know, the cost of a special is gonna run us somewhere around 40,000. Now, 40,000 could be more depending upon, again, the costs go up depending upon how many people actually request vote by mail, because postage and manpower are the biggest cost derivative of the elections. Yes, the ballots are, but when I look at all the figures, that's where the money comes up. And so it would be at a minimum 40,000, could give or take depending upon early voting. By law, if we did it in this calendar year, we would have to, anybody who applied for all elections, we would have to send them a ballot. So that's something else that you would need to take into account.
September 1st would be too soon, right?
Well, September 1st is the primary.
Right.
Are you
And presumably people will show up for a primary, right? And the final, like the statewide ballot questions are not on the primary ballot.
Correct. So that would entail a dual election, which I would never recommend, because essentially what you're doing is holding two elections at the same time.
We can't
You can't put a question on the ballot.
the primary ballot,
No.
okay,
Yeah, unfortunately.
yeah.
And I've done one dual election, and can it be done? Sure, anything can be done.
Yeah, but you have to make sure people post
It's
ballots.
it's a logistical nightmare,
Yeah.
and it's
And procedurally, not that it's required for debt exclusion, but in that case, there wouldn't have been a town meeting prior to the ballot question vote, which is the normal rhythm, but it's not, you could go ballot question first, then town meeting, but typically for debt exclusions, we have to go first. Yeah.
So the two we have in question right now, the fire station and potential outbreak. As far as we know right now, is the fire station committee still preparing to move on the general election?
They're planning on a fall town meeting with the expectation of a ballot question on the state election ballot, but more generally that time of year.
so the other thing that I should inform you, August 5th is the deadline that a decision would need to be made. The board would need to have voted and notified me, so I have a deadline to notify the Secretary of State if you are gonna have a ballot question on the November ballot. And it has to be a hard copy, so it has to have enough time for it to, the physical paperwork, I can't email it, so a vote would have to occur from your office, and the actual questions would have had to have been written. I mean, it's pretty standard questions, when you're talking about an override question, you can't, they write everything out. But town council would still have to write it. You folks would have to approve it, get it to me, and I would have to fill out the necessary paperwork to get it to the Secretary of State's office. So it's not a large window for you folks to make a decision. And for a special election, it's 35 days you have to notify me before you want that election. So as long as I am notified, then we can call an election.
So on the table for us, if we're talking about Labouré, correct me if I have this wrong, Sue, if we want it on the state election, it should all be done by August 5th, which we discussed previously. I think we were leaning towards a special election, after setting the town meeting date for Labouré. So that we only, the idea of doing as fire and Labouré end up on the same special election, or to we aspire to moving forward being on the state. So would your preference be that we do not have any ballot questions on the state?
I don't personally have a preference. I think it would strictly be for you folks, but I do caution by having the question that it can be overlooked. So my fear would be that you wouldn't get the visibility that you may need.
But you're talking from a, I'm just trying to weigh the two, like,
Correct.
you're talking out of a higher turnout election already, so you may lose, people may miss it out of a much higher turnout than a special
You
election,
still
so.
could get the same,
Yeah.
it could still have the same outcome as if you did it.
And to me, when you're holding an election, what drives the voter is the cause of what they're voting
Yeah.
for. So you folks, myself, we can all wave banners. If the residents aren't excited about that election, they're not gonna come. So, a special election, we could get just as much or more than the state election, honestly. I don't think for this particular election, there's a lot of interest in the races. I think that there will be a decent voter turnout. It's not gonna be like a presidential, but I do think that there's enough engagement that we will see a good voter turnout.
Yeah, but can't your workers tell everybody there's a back page, make sure you,
Oh, and they would, and there'd be signage.
so it wouldn't be against the law?
Nope, so regardless, this is gonna be a multi-page ballot, so we will have in every envelope, please remember to return all pages. Because for us, even if somebody didn't wanna vote on any of them, if we don't get those ballots back for an accounting purposes and for our paperwork, it's difficult, not having all of those ballots back, so we want them all back. We want answers on them too, but, we want to make sure that when somebody's in person, it's a different atmosphere. Our folks are right there, they hand them the ballot, oh, there's 3 pages, please make sure you submit them into the ballot box. There's somebody in the ballot box that's saying, you only have 1 page, you gotta go back and get those other ones. We'll have people perusing to make sure that no ballot is left behind. At home, it's a different environment, and everybody's good intention, they may have their papers there and really honestly think that they put all of them in there, and they may not. Or somebody may say, I don't care about those, I'm not gonna put them back in. And figure, I'm just gonna put in what I voted on, because that makes sense to me. So, despite all efforts, we will still get a percentage that will not come back in its entirety.
Just one last question.
Yeah.
Do you have a view on if we're trying to move quickly on a special election, like what's a reasonable time to space that out from?
So, I mean, we could do it, the November 3rd is the election. I mean, in theory, we could be working towards a mid-November election. You know,
Yeah.
so the other thing that I would need to keep in mind is for our state election, we have 3 different precinct style ballots. So on top of having 4 ballots, four pages or 3-page cards, we have 4 different, for all intents and purposes, zones. So you are in precinct 6, right?
Very nice.
So precinct 6 votes in one zone. Somebody who's in precinct 5 votes in another zone. So we have different ballots, which can be confusing. So thankfully, a special election, everybody in the town would get the same. It's not like that we would have town meeting members or this breakup of the town for different legislative offices. So, you know, as there's a lot of moving parts when we're sending out ballots and making sure the ballots, that each voter is getting the correct candidates on their ballot.
So you would like to have 2 elections to make sure everything gets done right.
I think it's a safer prediction. I don't necessarily like the cost associated with it. But weighing, we want the voters to know what they're voting on, see what they're voting on, and make sure that those that really intend to vote on this are voting. I think having a special election is the way to go. It can't get lost in the mix.
It may be worthwhile to be a little more specific on dates, just because that's such a busy time of year. So if it's not on the state election, it's November 3rd. The other Tuesdays in November are the 10th and the 17th, and then the 24th is the week of Thanksgiving, so I think we all want to avoid the 24th. So it sounds like the 17th would be the option in November, and that, would the ballots, vote by mail ballots be crossing the mail of the state election ballots?
So they would,
Okay.
yep. But the majority of the state ballots would be out. So the last day that we can mail out ballots for the state election is gonna be somewhere around October 27th.
Okay.
So there would be a little bit of crossover, but the major bulk is like those first weeks that we get it, because all the people, it's just more people apply in the very beginning, and then it dips down.
Sure. And then in December, the 1st is a Tuesday and the 8th is a Tuesday, and then we're probably getting close to the holidays, we'd have to check the holiday calendar and come up with that, but, okay.
November 17th to December 1st, December 8th.
November 17th, I'm sorry.
No, November 17, December 1, December 8, December 15, depending on how
So
that's
I
late
could
into the calendar year.
work out a schedule, calendar, and count back and everything, give you the dates of
Okay.
what we would need things by, so you'd have a better idea of what dates you're looking at, if that's helpful.
Should we engage the fire station building committee to see?
I can check with them, and then we may wanna check with our friends at the schools about how disruptive that would be to have a special election at that time of year as well, so we can
Correct.
do both
Yeah.
of those things and check back in on the 14th as well.
Schools and fire.
And the schools are phenomenal, so I would never want to take for granted them.
Very helpful.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you for
Sue.
having me, and if
Thank
you have
you.
any
Thank you for
questions,
waiting, Sue.
let me know, and I will get that email off to you folks, by the end of tomorrow. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we got, put it in gear.
That's your job. We're all
Alright.
talked out.
Moving to 7, discussion approval, energy credit agreement with Rewild. You can all have the documents. thoughts or comments from the members, unless Ms. Milano, you have some context you'd like to share?
We are in a place with town council and their council not quite able to get over the finish line still, so there are really two options. If the board is comfortable with these agreements as a policy decision and open to approval of entering into this agreement, the board could vote tonight, subject to approval of town council, and if there's anything where town council and their council just a complete disagreement on, then it kicks back to the board for a decision whether to just accept the agreement with Rewild's preferred language, or if council and their council would mutually agree with the terms that we could proceed with execution. So the board could approve it, subject to town council's approval tonight, or you can hold off until July 14th and see if they're able to agree. In the meantime, Rewild, I'd say, is probably getting a little antsy, but they're also at the same time part of the issue that we're facing, so those are the two options. If you're agreeable in terms of the policy decision, we can leave it subject to town council.
Move to approve the energy credit agreement with Rewild LLC, subject to approval by town
Our
council.
resident attorney is okay with that, I am as well.
Second,
Alright, Mr. Driscoll,
yes.
Mr. O'Shaughnessy,
Yes.
Ms. Hager,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Thank you. Alright, number 8, discussion and approval amendments to H.4094, the amendment reading, an act relative to the establishment of a Milton means tested property tax exemption. Thoughts, comments from the members? This was sent to us from our state representatives, with some language being changed for it. Bill going to the House. Any thoughts or comments on that amendment? If not, I will take a motion.
Appreciate Representative Wells pushing this along. It's very important, but I move to approve the amendments to H.4094, an act relative to the establishment of the Milton means tested property tax exemption.
Second,
Second, Mr. Driscoll.
yes.
Mr. O'Shaughnessy.
Yes.
Ms. Hager.
Yes.
Myself, yes, and I'll echo Mr. O'Shaughnessy's thoughts, and thank you, Representative Wells, for your work. Number 9, discussion update, committee reports. Milton Budget Coordination Committee, Chair Hagerty.
I do not have an update. Our next meeting is on Monday.
Update, School Building Committee, Mr. O'Shaughnessy.
I think we pretty thoroughly covered
That's right.
where we're at, but I'll just flag, there's a date next week, Monday, June 29th, where I encourage this to happen. The architect is coming to the meeting, allow us to continue to hash out, make sure we're all on the same page about the scope of the work. So I encourage folks to attend and participate if you're interested.
Thank you, Affordable Housing Trust.
We met 2 weeks ago and we approved $600,000 to the Milton Housing Authority. And that will help them get more grants, secure more grants. I think it's over $1.8 million. For some new porches, fix the 2 units with the drain issue, and new siding, and updating on air conditioning.
Thank you. I will just add the housing production plan. I don't think I have that calendar that was shared tonight.
I can distribute it.
Just try to secure that and send it out to all the members so we can see that plan for work as well as community engagement. Alright, moving to number 10, I would like to request that we move this to the next meeting, this discussion, since member Nolan is not here. And I think we need a little more space to just kind of have a longer discussion on it if we'd like. So we move number 10 to the future. And number 11, discussion approval board and committee appointments and reappointments. Now, we can do this wholesale, but I will ask you, Ms. Milano, because I do wanna pull one out. I want to.
Gonna pull me out of the airplane?
No, you stuck there. No, I wanna pull out the get the exact name, the local historic district study committee. Others, I think if I can pull that out, we can do this as a whole. My thought on that is, I believe about a year ago, the Historic District Study Committee came to us, and they were gonna put forward a article at town meeting. It was then edited and then pulled from the article, and now they've resubmitted it, and haven't made as many changes, so I would like to have a discussion with them to see if this article is the end of their work. Perhaps the committee is no longer necessary. Just an update as to their article of work, and is the committee gonna continue? So, thoughts from the members?
I'm fine with that.
I'm all right with that.
Alright, so I'll take a motion to approve all of them except for the local historic district study committee reappointments, and we will engage them into coming into discussion with us.
So moved.
Second.
Alright, Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Mr. Oversheimer,
Yes.
Ms. Haggerty,
Yes.
and myself, yes. I'll move too far ahead. Nope, here we go, number 12. Discussion approval application for Milton High School to use town green funding. Yep, so I will take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to move to approve the application from Milton High School to use the town green and Baron Hugo gazebo on September 5th, 2026, from 6 to 8 p.m. gazebo for a cabaret style performance.
Second.
Wait a second, sounds exciting. Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshine.
Yes.
Ms. Haggerty.
Yes.
And myself, yes, thank you. 13, discussion approval meeting minutes from May 26, 2026. I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes for May 26, 2026.
Motion made,
Second.
motion seconded. Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshine.
Yes.
Ms. Haggerty.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Now move to the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The work has started over on that small stage in Manning Park in East Milton Deck, so that work is underway now. So we appreciate your patience while we get that built out. Excavation work, site work is also started at Peverly Park for the new playground located on Sumner Street next to Pope's Pond. So the excavation is underway there, and the contractor who will be building a playground will be following over the course of the next few weeks. So we're excited to see that project take shape. We have several open positions in town hall and elsewhere for anybody interested or knowing anybody looking for jobs, particularly a couple payroll positions, one in town hall and one in police, an administrative position down at DPW, laborer positions at DPW. So please share that with perhaps any recent college grads who are still trying to figure out what they want to do. We are taking applications actively. In relation to some of the school project conversation, if you recall, we had submitted a home rule petition that town meeting approved at some point last year to extend the deadline by which the town needed to act on a potential school project at Guile Road. That had a deadline of 2028. That we had filed a home rule petition and town meeting approved to extend that by 5 years, and senators can file that, and that has been approved and signed into law, so that land swap legislation had required a school project to be acted upon by 2028, that is now extended to 2033, so I appreciate the legislative delegation's work on shepherding that through and getting that approved. And then lastly, we had a walkthrough at the East Milton Fire Station today for the request for proposals related to the existing East Milton Fire Station, and we'll be following up with those who visited, and those proposals are due in mid-July. So we'll see what kind of an interest level there is for that project, and that's my
Thank you, Mr. Milano. As the chair, honestly, I don't have much to report this week. I will just say thank you to the planning board and the schools for coming in this week, but the planning board specifically. As you can tell from the conversation we have, there is a lot to do. And very happy for their engagement as well as their partnership and all of the work that we have ahead. And I think the collaboration is the sort of thing that gets us the best stuff for the town. So thank you for that. Members' reports. Anyone? Nothing from me. It's going twice. Nothing from the members. Alright, public comment response, we do not have public comment. Future meeting scheduled Tuesday, July 14th and July 21st. That's the works, I believe. Any future agenda items from the others?
We've got a lot on our plates right now.
Yes. Perhaps, again, I'll say the re-engagement with the church for an election. Maybe it can't happen at a special election, but something we should think about.
I think I'd put for one of the July meetings, further consideration of traffic subcommittee oversight of the calming report. Don't have a strong preference which one.
Alright, with that, I will move to enter executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, Library College, 303 Adams Street, based on it. My belief that the discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board. The select board will not return to open session.
Second.
Second, Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshadow.
Yes.
Ms. Aguirre.
Yes.
Myself, yes. I'll also move to enter executive session to consider the purchase, enter executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, Milton Clerical Unit of the Southeastern Public Employees Association, Milton Professional Management Association, Milton Public Employee Association, Milton Firefighters Local 1116, Milton Police Association, Milton Superior Officers, Milton Library Association. Based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the select board. The select board will not return to open session.
Second.
Second, Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshadow.
Yes.
Ms. Hagerty.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
You do need one more for 488 kidnapped,
Oh, that's it. Oh, you're right.
so it starts the same.
Move to enter executive session to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property 488 Canton Ave. Based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board will not return to open session. Give it a second.
Second.
Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshadow.
Yes.
Ms. Mack, Ms. Hyde. And myself, yes. Do we need to go, Mr. Overshadow?
It's up to you.
One, I will also call to order.
Well, let's adjourn select board first, and then.
And move to
I'll-
adjourn the select board.
Second.
So moved, second.
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshadow.
Yes.
Ms. Hagerty.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Now you can call to order.
Now I must call to order trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust. Discuss approval of meeting minutes April 14th.
That's first, yeah.
That's the only one. We,
And then town farm property is broadly on as well, and we're in open session still and still broadcasting.
so we're in open session for that. So I will take a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Overshadow.
I'll probably abstain, this was before on the committee, and I don't remember these
Yes.
minutes.
We have all these minutes.
Okay.
Yes. Alright, so let's discuss the property and building commission maintenance, Mr. Milton.
So there are really two tracks here, I think one conversation is near term, medium term, in terms of what kind of level of maintenance effort folks are looking for in terms of the actual physical structure and the physical landscape up there. Our approach generally is minimal attention, we will keep an eye on it, we'll maintain and visit in case there are issues, but those buildings are quickly degrading and are in tough shape, as anybody who's been up there recently. And then the other track of this conversation is the more long-term, what does the trustees want to do with that? So defer to the members and which conversation you're interested in having of those two or both. But happy to talk more about what's been going on in terms of the building condition, if that's an important conversation.
Yeah.
I think the building commission, we can talk about the
Yeah.
long term, I think that's gonna be the
Yeah.
agenda items necessary, like RFP, change in scope, but our options for maintenance and cost, something we should discuss. So right now, who's up there?
Between DPW and Consolidated, the departments will keep an eye on it, but we don't do preventative maintenance, there's really not much we can do now other than, if we think they're truly unsafe, removal of historic structures, that would trigger a conversation with the historical commission, certainly. Or if there's work or studies that the board wants us to undertake in terms of understanding the condition of those buildings better, that's something that the project would have theoretically achieved without the expense of the trustees. So that's just kind of broad strokes of just looking for feedback on what information you're looking for, or what you want from us on that.
Are the buildings themselves secured so that nobody could get into them? Like, my fear at this point is like a group of kids thinks it's like funny to go in there or something and they get hurt.
They're secured in the sense that they're boarded and blocked, but they're not fenced off. They're, somebody wanted to, they would do the certificates and the structures. And then one of the challenges that we face is it's land that was given to the town, but it's under the control of the trustees. So we're cautious on spending town tax dollars, but also on the flip side, that endowment money is really, we're trying to use that for poor Milton, less so on property maintenance, so that is a factor as to why there hasn't been investment out there, because it would deprive those other,
But it is an
building
option
funds.
for maintenance of the property usage,
Because it's part of the land.
When the minimal maintenance we're doing, what does that include? Is that just cutting back weeds, general shrubbery?
Yeah, there was tarps put on one of the buildings at one point, so they're, that's falling off, so some of them will pick up the trash and stuff on occasion when necessary.
But nothing being done to the building, like going inside, cleaning anything out, or just.
I'm just trying to think about what potential decision is before us, like what options are we choosing amongst eventually here? Whether to contribute more funds to enhance maintenance, basically.
Pretty much.
What would that enhance maintenance?
We'd really have to engage with professionals to figure out what level of effort it would take to stabilize them. So I guess if that's really the first question you're looking for an answer on, we can start talking to a few folks as to, from a engineering and building perspective, what would it take to really stabilize and prevent further deterioration at this point.
I wasn't thinking I would be going into the building structure, but I was continuing to think about the land. Maintenance of the building, certainly starts to run us a lot of money, I guess.
Go get the building inspector, you might wanna tear them down.
So it sounds like we do not have much of an appetite for increasing the building maintenance. So the land maintenance.
Just don't want no one to get hurt. And, I just hope, they don't go up on fire.
Is there something we can do just in terms of having someone review those buildings for potential dangers?
We can certainly, we'll
Or
prod
hazards
everybody
that
again,
we're
just to
aware
make sure everybody's been up there for sidewalk and there's nothing else from a life safety perspective that they would like us to do. We've had those conversations, but we'll reiterate it now, and then, we'll kick around with Consolidated in terms of their ideas as to anything else, just to kind of hold, any preventative things that they would suggest on the buildings themselves, if there's anything that's kind of, more frequent.
Maybe that we could start to start with Consolidated and see if there's any dangers, hazards, things that we can do on flag ahead of time. So seems reasonable.
And like the runway of being in this situation is until there's a longer term. Yeah, so.
Fire hazard's the one that's coming on.
And it's partly why we thinking a project was going to move forward. address the issue
Right.
is why there wasn't a lot there, but now we're in a kind of a holding pattern for at least the foreseeable future, so it just brings it back to the forefront.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion made second, Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Rochelle.
Yes.
Ms. Hagerty.
Yep.
And myself, yes. Alright, so that takes us off of public.
We're still live at the moment, so until Sean